And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive. It is Friday, August 12th. Very happy about that. I am Josh Engelman. I am joined by Greg Ehrenberg. We are brought to you by OddsShopper. 13 games, 55 minutes to do so. Hit that like button now. I'm not going to have a lot of time to ask you to continue to do it throughout the show, so do it now so I don't have to bother you later. We are going to fly through this slate. If you wanted thoughts on one of these shitty teams like the Pirates, you are out of luck today, pal. We don't have time for it. Live Before Lock coming up next at 6 p.m. Greg, how are you?
4 minutes to go per game, but no real issues there. We've got Terry and Emac. They'll do some of the heavy lifting after us. They could go for, I think Tyler said he wanted at least an hour and a half show, whatever it was that his demands were as the producer. Terry and Emac, they'll be covering everything also after us. So we've still got a 2-hour block of baseball, 13 games to talk about, and Coors Field, lots of pitching options, and it's a good one.
All righty. You ready to dive in? I have no more pleasantries.
Yep.
Nats and Padres. Padres, big favorites here. Corey Abbott, unowned, shouldn't be owned. Mike Clevenger on the opposite end, 7,800. He's 16% owned on DK. That's the exact number that I have right now against Washington. Good spot. Not all that good of a lineup from the Nats. I think Clevenger looks pretty solid for a sub 8K pitcher.
Yeah. And then one other thing to add also about this game, this is one of the bets I have for the slate. The line has moved a little bit. I bet the Padres over 2.5 runs in the first 5 innings. It has moved to minus 130 on the over since when I bet it this morning. But considering their team total for the game over under is 5.5, and for the first 5 innings, it's 2.5. And I think Corey Abbott sucks. I don't really quite understand how they came up with 2.5 as the fair line for the first 5 innings. Abbott, there's no reason to think he's going to be good. Not only is he a 5.68 ERA in his 12 innings he's pitched in the major leagues this year, but in AAA with the Cubs, 4.5 ERA, 7.3 FIP. In AAA with the Nationals this year, 5.08 ERA, 4.7 FIP. He's 26 years old. He's an unrated prospect. The Padres now have one of the most loaded offenses in the league with Juan Soto and Josh Bell in the mix. And because there's a Coors Field game that everybody's playing, all of the other high-end offenses are a little bit under-owned. I really like getting into the Padres.
Yeah, let's talk about it. We've only got Juan Soto and Manny Machado in double digits in ownership. This is our 4th-ranked team in Top Stack, 3rd in ownership. They were actually 3rd for me in Top Stack, but at a slightly lesser percentage. So let's just call it the same in this spot. I'm actually a little light on the Padres. I'm not happy about that. We just have a bunch of teams to me that look the same. The Padres, the Yankees, the Astros, the Dodgers, where it's high-level offenses that are just sort of fitting in differently for me. If I got a bunch of the Padres, that would be cool. I had them earlier today. I think I'm just going to get one of those elite offenses and not the rest of them. And I don't really care which one I get in that group.
Yeah. So to me with the Padres, it's a little bit, and I haven't built lineups yet. I assume I would be a little bit overweight based on some of our tools now. And also just my general thinking of Corey Abbott is not a viable big league pitcher. So I really like getting to the Padres. And I like your call also when it comes to Clevenger, because when you look at some of the pitching on this slate, Scherzer, there's a lot of pitchers to look at today. But Scherzer and Rodon are both projected for 40% ownership. We got Kopech at just under 30, and nobody else is really all that popular at pitcher. I think there's a lot of guys that make for good pivots off of Kopech who I'm not all that high on at this point in the season, and Clevenger's one of them.
All righty. Anything else that you think that we should be touching on for this game? I don't really don't accidentally roster the wrong Luis Garcia or upload the wrong Luis Garcia projection. That's really the only thing that I can say in this one.
Yeah, there's nothing that, I certainly don't feel any need to stack the Nationals offense.
No, neither do I. I actually legitimately do not have them at all.
No reason to on this slate.
Now, 24th in our top stack tool, by the way. There's only 26 teams.
Yeah.
I do, however, have an absolute ton of this next one. Blue Jays and Guardians, 4.7 run implied total for the Jays, 3.7 for the Guardians. Jose Barrios and Cal Quantrill. We are not talking about Quantrill. I think we deserve a quick look at Barrios. I don't love the matchup against Cleveland. He's 6% owned. He just happens to be 7,300, and he's not a complete garbage pitcher. At 7,300, if you can pitch deep enough into a game, you end up sort of looking okay by default. And I think that's how he looks. I'll get about 5%. Not a priority, but definitely a guy you can roster.
Yeah, a bit of a disaster for Jose Barrios, who Blue Jays traded for him last year. He was really good after they made that acquisition, had what looked like was kind of a breaking out type second half of the season for him, to the point where some people were betting him as a dark horse Cy Young candidate this year. And he has promptly followed that up by being one of the worst pitchers in baseball this season. 118 innings, 5.19 ERA, 5.5 expected ERA, just basically been a replacement level player per the salary he's getting paid, one of the least valuable players in baseball on a points per dollar basis. And at one point, I made fun of him a lot this year, but part of it was tongue in cheek. Like, I was like, surely he's going to turn it around at some point. And I've just kind of lost hope in it. I thought maybe there was a chance it was like a Kevin Gausman thing where he was just tipping pitches and could figure it out. You know, it's baseball. There's variance. There's always individual starts where he looks okay, but on the whole, he sucked this year. The strikeouts haven't been there. 21.1% is the lowest mark of his career. So big slate. I don't find him to be a priority at all. Not that I'm looking to stack against him either, but the Blue Jays, on the other hand, are a team I do want to stack at low ownership.
This will be my highest exposed stack, at least relative to ownership. At this moment, they are the team I have third most overall. That's a lot when they're only 3% in the aggregate. They make up 15% of my 4 and 5 man stacks. That could end up being an even bigger number as we get closer to lock. They're an unowned team with massive amounts of power, and Cal Quantrill is not exactly good.
No, and a lot of people might look at the 3.88 ERA and think, oh, he's been serviceable this year, but a lot of it's lucky. He has a 283 BABIP, a 74.5% left on base rate. So he has a 3.88 ERA, but a 4.63 expected ERA, a 4.58 FIP. And this is always what's key for me. When a pitcher is going up against a powerful offense and they don't generate swing and misses or strikeouts, it's just a recipe for disaster. He's a 15.3% K rate this year. He allows a lot of contact. This is a Blue Jays team you don't want to allow contact to, because if they're putting the bat on the ball, they're probably going to hit it hard. So really, really low owned team. Not to jump too far ahead, but I think Coors Field is pretty over-owned today, and that makes pretty much any other good offense a spot I want to get to, overweight to. And the Blue Jays are certainly one of those teams. Less than 3% ownership, I think, is pretty crazy in this matchup.
We have their top stack odds, at least when I pulled it last, at 3.5%, 10th overall, 11th in ownership. I actually had them at 5.5% as my 6th stack. Even if we want to just say the truth lies somewhere in the middle, I think this is a team with upside that's going a little bit underrepresented. Outside of Alejandro Kirk at 8% owned, the next highest guy is 3% owned Bo Bichette. I just want these guys if they're 2 and 3% owned.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I think that everybody in the lineup, maybe Kirk probably more appropriately owned, but everybody else I think is underowned.
All right. Cleveland, I do not have a single share of. They are 13th in top stack, 20th in ownership. I could see a scenario where you would want to get to Cleveland stacks if Barrios was pulling any sort of additional ownership. I just can't really look at them and think this team with a sub-4 implied total is any sort of priority when they're like the 12th or 13th best top stack team.
Yeah, it depends how many lineups everybody's playing. If you're playing, 5, 10, 20 lineups, I would say no need. If you're getting to a point where you're somebody who's max entering, playing 150 lineups, I do think this is a team that warrants ownership because they're only 1% owned. And the main reason is because the bad starts for Barrios have been really, really bad this year. And there's just clear upside in targeting them. So since June 15th, so we're looking at 2 months now, he's allowed at least one homer in all but one start, and he's allowed multiple homers in about half those starts. His last start coming off an outing against the Twins, he pitched 3 innings, gave up 2 homers, 5 earned runs. So when things go south for Jose Barrios, there's so much upside in the opposing offense that in large field, I do think that they're a team worth stacking just because they're only 1% owned right now.
I have no problem with it. I do think, like, on paper, if you kind of got to think about getting to Cleveland on purpose, because I don't think that you just like naturally end up on a team this far down the top stack odds. But I think the pieces fit together when you look at the ownership.
Yeah, and they're also not. And also, one other thing also when it comes to this team, even at 1% ownership, could they end up coming in a little bit higher? Potentially, but almost all of their ownership is usually taken by Jose Ramirez, and any 5-man stack becomes like insanely contrarian with Cleveland.
Yeah. And Ramirez isn't even getting that ownership today. So if you're ever going to get on them, 4% owned Jose Ramirez today, it's probably the time to do it.
Yeah, agreed.
Rays and Orioles, 3.9 run implied total for the Rays, 3.4 for the Orioles. Corey Kluber and Austin Voth. Neither guy really pulling any ownership, sub 5% on both sides. That's what I have. I got 5% of Austin Voth and 3% of Kluber. I don't like, they're fine.
Yeah.
No priorities.
In the interest of time, this is a very unappealing game by and large part. Like, I don't think Corey Kluber warrants all that much ownership because the strikeout rate hasn't been there and his price is still, somewhat significant. It's not like we're getting him for free or anything like that. We have to pay $8,900 for Corey Kluber. It's just hard to find the upside to really think that he's going to pay off that salary and win tournaments. But then we've got these offenses too. Like, is Austin Voth good? No, probably not. But the Rays are fairly popular today. They're projected for 3.7% ownership. That has them as one of the most negatively leveraged teams in our top stacks tool. So I don't like the pitchers. If I had to pick an offense, it would be the Rays. But since they're over-owned and they're actually picking up ownership, I don't have interest. So I don't think there's anything really worth talking about.
I have no Orioles in a lineup. I have 2 shares of Christian Bethancourt and 3 shares of Jose Siri, and that's it for anything here. And that'll probably sort its way out by the time I actually run a real crunch. This game is a complete cross off for me.
Yeah, it's not a good one.
Schedule for the rest of the day is pretty easy. MLB Live before lock coming up next. EMAC and Terry taking you all the way up to 7:05. If you're looking for free content, pay attention to chat. The Stream Elements bot will drop links, but MLB top stacks are free today. I personally think it's the best tool that we offer. I mentioned it earlier on the strategy show today. I think it's the first top tool that we ever created, and I've been using it ever since. So we're talking like mid 2018, something in that neighborhood. It's been a long time. It's a great tool. If you're trying to build lineups by hand, it's even better for you. I think it's a giant utility. So make sure you're using that today. Check out what we've got behind the scenes. We definitely got to talk here. White Sox and Tigers, 4.8 run implied total for the Sox, 3.4 for the Tigers. Michael Kopech and Daniel Norris. No one going to Norris at the flat 5K. When I say flat 5K, assuming that there isn't anybody below that. There are people below that. That is Josh Boers. We won't talk about him either. We will talk about Kopech, though. 7,100 against a lowly Tigers team, 27% owned. I think that ownership makes perfect sense.
Yeah, to an extent. I think he's very safe. I do kind of question the upside of Kopech because he's been so miserable from a strikeout perspective. And as the year has dragged on, his strikeout rate has gone down progressively as the year's gone on. So we now have in the second half of the season, he has a 16.6% strikeout rate compared to 21.1% in the first half of the season. So it's not like he was some guy who was generating a whole bunch of swing and misses to open the year. And now it's even gotten worse as the year's gone on. And this is actually something sportsbooks haven't really picked up on. I think Kopech is at the under on his strikeouts prop, something like 8 or 9 starts in a row at this point. His strikeout prop today is 6.5. That's been pretty regular for him that he's had strikeout props 5.5, 6.5. He hasn't had a start with more than 5 strikeouts since June 29th. His strikeout prop, like I said today, is 6.5. He hasn't had a start with 7 or more strikeouts since June 7th. So if you've just been blindly betting under strikeout props for Michael Kopech, it's gone really well as of late because, it's been about a month and a half since he hit the over on a strikeout prop. So he's safe today. I get why people would go to him for salary savings, but there are pivots that I really like in this price range. So I think ultimately I'll probably come a little bit underweight to Kopech.
Only upside for him, right? Well, I don't want to say only upside. That's the wrong way to say it, but potential upside for Kopech here. 28% K rate to lefties this season, 13% swinging strike rate. It's righties that he can't strike out. And we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, looks like 5 lefties up against Kopech. So that sort of balance bodes well for him. The real appeal here is that he's 7,100 and it's the Tigers. And that's just that's an environment where if you are a starter and you can pitch starter innings, if you're facing the Tigers at 7,100, you are viable by default.
Yeah, he has insane numbers against lefties now that I have it in front of me because he gets the shit kicked out of him by lefties. They hit him really hard, but when they don't, he does generate strikeouts against them. So it is really weird numbers against him. Lefties have a 332 WOBA against him, but then he does strike out a decent amount of them when they aren't getting on base. So I do think there's maybe a little bit more downside than the field is realizing. And there's other pivots that I do really like in this price range that we'll talk about as we go along.
All righty. We're not going to talk about Norris. I'd imagine we're not going to talk about the Tigers bats.
No, I don't see any reason to get to the Tigers. If we'd Kopech picking up a lot of ownership on a small slate, I think I can make the case for leverage, but the Tigers are so shitty against right-hand pitching. Like, I was looking through the WRC plus against handedness of pitchers with Eric the other day. And outside of that shortened season where there was only 60 games played, I couldn't find a team that was worse against the handedness of a pitcher over the course of an entire season what the Tigers have been this year. So it's hard for me to think they're going to have actual real success to be like a highest scoring team on the slate.
They are number 2 in value. Kopech is in basically a quarter of the lineups. I get the appeal if that's something you want to do, to be on the opposite side of that ownership. The fact that they are cost efficient, it is not a direction I'm going. Are you going to the White Sox? 8th in top stack, 7th in ownership.
They're about reasonably owned. Like, if you have White Sox in your player pool, they warrant more or less about that 4%, 5% exposure the field's at. No real hot takes here. I've gotten crushed rostering the White Sox on a lot of slates recently where it's like, oh, cool, they're 2% owned or 3% owned against some shitty pitcher. This must be the spot to go to the White Sox, and they just don't do anything. And I think the field more or less has it right today, which I'm happy about, because if they were 1% owned, I would have to play them again. It would go poorly again, and then I'd get upset and then rinse and repeat. But today, they're about appropriately owned.
I agree. I think they're appropriately owned. That's basically where I have them as well. So I don't have too much else to add here for Chicago.
Not me either.
We're definitely talking about this one as well. Mets and Phillies, 4.2 run implied total for the Mets, 2.8 for the Phillies, tied for the low end with the Pirates. So it's not a great day for Pennsylvania baseball teams and their offenses. Max Scherzer going for the Mets, Ranger Suarez going for the Phillies. Suarez pulling no ownership. 9K Suarez against the Mets here, just going to be a kind of tough sell, even though he is a completely solid pitcher. Max Scherzer, on the other hand, slightly better than solid. $10,900, most expensive guy today. One of the most expensive salaries I can remember seeing in weeks. Maybe they're starting to price up the high end of pitchers. 41% owned at this moment. I've got more than that, and I will happily take it. It's Max Scherzer.
Yeah, I think the only real discussion to have about Scherzer is if you were playing cash games on FanDuel, should you play Scherzer or Rodon? And honestly, I don't have an issue with either of them. I don't think there's real strong preference. If you build out the hitters you like and you have the salary to get to Scherzer, play him. If you need the $600 salary savings, go to Rodon. I think they're pretty clearly the top 2 pitching options on the slate. And, I hate to bring a narrative element into this, but this is a rivalry game for the Mets. The Phillies have played really well as of late, and I think that could mean a longer leash for Max Scherzer. This could be one of these starts where, maybe sitting like 96 pitches going into the 7th inning or the 8th inning, and the Mets are like, let's just give him one more inning because it's a high leverage game. And Max Scherzer's an absolute insane person, because we've seen over the course of his career, these are the spots where teams generally give him a longer leash. And if they try to take him out of the game, he'll refuse. So I do think that's maybe a little bit of an added bonus to Scherzer. You could get an extra out or two out of him for that. So either way, though, he's clearly a great play. He's the pitcher that I want to get the most exposure to alongside with Carlos Rodon, and I have no interest in stacking against him.
Unrelated to baseball, former number 2 pick Hashim Thabit expected to play in China this year. Didn't see that one coming at all. So,
yeah, let's see. I mean, he was... how was he 7'4"? Like, I forgot how tall he was.
He's definitely quite tall.
Let's see, 7'3" was. Oh, he's 35 years old now. Holy shit, am I washed?
One of the bigger busts out there. Anyway, Mets bats, I don't have it all, nor does the public. Phillies bats, I don't have it all, nor does the public. Anything here for you?
No, Ranger Suarez, I think, has proven to be a little bit of a fraud this year compared to last year, which wasn't really all that surprising looking at some of his underlying numbers. But it's not like he sucks. He's just worse than he was last year. He's a mediocre pitcher. The Mets are really expensive in this spot against Suarez. And considering the pitchers I want to prioritize today, it's hard for me to really think the Mets fit in with the pitchers I want to roster. And then we also only have them with 1.4% chance to be the top scoring team. So they're expensive. They don't have great odds of success, and there's other spots to get to.
Red Sox and Yankees, 4.5 run implied total for the Sox, 4.6 for the Yankees. Nathan Eovaldi and Domingo Herman Neither guy pulling any ownership. I'm actually getting to a little bit of Herman. I don't really know why, other than the price tag. I have 6%, so it's not as if he's showing up in everything.
Yeah.
I can't really advocate for it. I don't think he's all that great. I think the Red Sox are good, but I do need some pay down options if I'm just jamming Max Scherzer in at this moment. So I am getting there, but don't use that as any sort of hint that you should. I agree with the field. These guys don't really deserve all that much ownership.
No, it's such a tough matchup for Eovaldi, and he's frankly just not pitched well since coming off the injured list. And then for Domingo Germán, just overall really bad trends when it comes to his strikeout stuff. So year by year, it's gone down every single year since he's been in the big leagues. First broke in 2017, had a 29% K rate. It has progressively gone down every season since, to the time we've gotten to this year, where he now is a 16% K rate. So that's not something you like to see. His fastball velocity is also, not shockingly, subsequently gone down in a similar way that his strikeout rate has. So when he first broke into the league, his average fastball velocity was 96.1. Now it's 93.1. So if you look at why he's striking out less guys, the stuff isn't quite the same, which he's older now. He's 29. He's dealt with all kinds of off-field issues, which I think is probably taken his focus away from baseball at certain points in time. He retired at one point and unretired, and his numbers are just miserable this year. 5.09 ERA, 6.66 expected ERA. I can't advocate for either of the pitchers.
Are you going to advocate for one of the teams? I do like one of these teams. I'm curious which one you like, if you like either or both.
Yeah. So the Red Sox are actually picking up nearly twice the ownership of the Yankees, which is a little weird to me because the Yankees offense is quite a bit better than the Red Sox. And then when it comes to the two pitchers, also Eovaldi and Germán, I do think Eovaldi is considerably better than Germán, but I do question how healthy Eovaldi is right now, just considering how much he has struggled since coming off the injured list. And he actually led all of the American League, I believe, in wins above replacement for pitchers last year. And he has just not been that guy this season. So second half of the year now, 7.19 ERA for Nathan Eovaldi. That comes with, better looking underlying numbers, but he's giving up a whole bunch of hard contact. And the Yankees have a really good offense that I think has some suppressed ownership because they've struggled a little bit lately. The Yankees have not been winning games at the same clip they were at the beginning of the year. So Eovaldi's a pitcher that I think could be had, especially based on some of these recent struggles. And the Yankees offense still has a lot of firepower in it. So I think the Yankees are going under owned at about 2.5% ownership.
Boston Red Sox, second most owned team for me at this moment. I'm getting to just an absolute load of Boston. Don't ask me why. I do have them ranked higher in my top stack odds. The lack of ownership is helping. The bottom of the order and the 2K MPE on Christian Arroyo is popping up pretty nicely for me as well. And I don't think that Kevin Plawecki is all that good. He's not really the guy coming along for the ride in a lot of my Boston stacks, so I am able to fill out with more high-end catching options that exist today. It appears that the Boston Red Sox will be in quite a bit of my lineups. I will make some tweaks to what I have. I'm ultimately going to be many multiples over the field, but as of right now, they are my second most exposed team, slightly ahead of the Toronto Blue Jays.
So you got some exposure to Germán. You're big on the Red Sox. That's I understand. If you just look at Germán's numbers for this year and you just say that this is the guy he is now, it would make sense to stack against him. I do rely on our top stacks tool a little bit, and just because Boston is picking up the ownership, it's not a spot that I'm dying to get to. The Yankees at the 2.3% ownership, I do really like them as a contrarian stack, though.
I'm surprised I'm not also getting to the Yankees. I think it's just a value thing. I have, and I'm matching up with the with our top stack tool. So they are 12th in value, 12th in top stack. Yankees are 6th in top stack. So you get that increase, but also much more difficult to roster financially. They are 21st in top value. And I think that's what's causing me to not get the Yankees. I can fit the Red Sox and still get to the Scherzers and Rodons of the world. If I go more to the Yankees, I get a little bit priced out of those top arms.
Yeah, no, I do think that the pricing could be a little bit prohibitive for the Yankees. But at the same time, too, like I don't mind going Scherzer or Rodon and then going to, well, number one, this is a spot where you just play Kopech because the Yankees are so low owned that the chalk pitcher isn't all that problematic. But Still other guys we're going to talk. We've already mentioned Mike Clevenger. I think he's a good option for a little bit of salary savings. And then other guys we're going to talk about in a second too, like Molly, Sandoval, I think are being underowned today.
Former Yankee Jordan Montgomery as well. I got nothing else here other than I'm telling everybody to play the Red Sox.
All right, let's hit on the next one then.
We are moving pretty good. We got to the mark that we needed to with 20 seconds to spare. OddsShopper is the presenting sponsor of this show. I do this every day, and I enjoy this read more than any other read that I do because it's the easiest one to do. The tool is completely free, costs you $0. So let's just start there. There is no downside for what I'm about to talk about. If you are in a legal state and you just want to shop around for the best lines that you could find, you could do that. You go to oddshopper.com, all the lines will be there. You can click right on it and directly go and make that bet if you need to. If you're not in a legal state, I still think it's a good idea to be looking at those things. However, the big draw here to me is going to be our player prop side. We're giving you the projections. We're giving you the expected win rate, the expected ROI. We've got parlay builders if you want to try to use those. All sorts of great tools, no cost to you whatsoever. Even if you're not in a legal state, I think all of those props will help you from a DFS perspective, especially if you're just trying to, make some coin flip decisions. You could look at some home run props. Maybe that's all you really need to do. If you are in a legal state, though, making sure you get the best line is the most important thing that you can do when you're when you're making a bet, and this tool will help you do that at no cost.
The only person here who can't afford free is Tyler Xander because he gets toast DoorDash to his home. So Tyler's bank account balance is like negative $31. So he can't afford $0, but everybody else here can.
Yeah. Sean V probably can't. I assume he's just poor in real life because of everything that he says. So you should probably use OddsShopper.
And by the way, also one other thing, if you're not in a legal betting state, there's a good chance that Prize Picks is available in your state. And that's also something that OddsShopper is a lot of utility for.
I do those reads on strategy shows and on the process. Rangers and Mariners, 3.7 run implied total for the Rangers, 4.4 for the Mariners. Josh Sborz, really hard to say. We'll just call him Josh. He's unowned and should be. George Kirby on the opposite side for the Mariners, 3% owned at 9,200. I think Kirby should probably be pulling a little bit more ownership. It's just really hard to justify because I think he's miles away from Scherzer and Rodon, but I think he's not even the next best option up there. I think that's probably Luis Garcia. And after that, you just sort of get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, and George Kirby is one of my favorite pitching prospects in baseball. Number one, he's got ridiculously good stuff. We also went to the same college, not at the same time because I'm washed, but George Kirby this year has shown to have tremendous upside. When he's on, things are going really well. He's had some individual starts, including one against the Orioles where he was chalk, where it went wayward very quickly. He gave up 4 homers in that start, but since then, 2 or less earned runs in every single outing. One thing that is a little bit concerning to me when it comes to George Kirby, I think the Mariners now gearing up for the postseason, and teams very frequent with young pitchers, they're on pitch restrictions, they're on inning restrictions. And some of the recent outings for George Kirby indicate to me that the Mariners want Kirby to be available for the postseason for them. And it's had them try to limit the amount that he's pitched into games. So a couple starts ago, he pitches 4 innings against Houston. Before that, he starts against the Texas Rangers, pitches a shutout, but they only let him go 5 innings. So I do think his upside is capped a little bit just because the team is so aware that he's a top young arm, really good pitching prospect. And the Mariners now, they're like 90% probability to make the playoffs. So I think that they're really trying to be conservative with his innings so that he's available for that tail end of the season.
Do you see anything else interesting in this game? Rangers bats, Mariners bats. They don't appear to be owned. Mariners are 7th in our top stack tool. Are they getting slept on here?
Yeah, less than 2% ownership for them. And this is a team that has been one of the more surprising teams in the league, particularly in the second half of the season. And when it comes to Josh Sborz, basically, I assume he's not going to go very deep into the game. 5.87 ERA, 4.75 expected ERA, but this is also his first start of the year. So let me look at some of the length we've gotten out of him recently. I guess stretched out a little bit because all his outings were 1 inning, and then each of his last 2 outings were 2 innings. So I assume we're probably getting like 2-3 innings out of him today. So primarily probably going to be a bullpen game for Texas. Let's see what their bullpen looks like. I generally don't love targeting teams going up against bullpen games, but I do think sub 2% ownership for the Mariners is pretty appealing. All right, let's see.
Yeah.
Rangers bullpen this year. It's not been great. It's kind of a middle of the road bullpen, a 3.93 FIP, 4 xFIP. I don't mind targeting this bullpen. Not that the Mariners are going to be a high priority stack, but I do think they're worth being like double the field or so in terms of ownership.
I'm not getting there, and I don't really know why, because I think they look good. They grade out really well for me. I don't have any problems with the top stack odds. They are mildly difficult to stack in that they've got 2 first basemen out of 9 spots. 3 out of the first 4 lineup spots are outfielders. So you start kicking the regular positions down the line a bit. It becomes a little bit less appealing. From a stats perspective, Josh Voorhees projects really well via Steamer. That's probably not helping. A 4.4 run implied total for the Mariners is interesting. I'm a little like, are you surprised to see it as low as it is for this spot?
Well, our projections have it quite a bit higher. So yes, actually, I'm almost thinking as we look through this, I want to pull up I'm just going to go to look at what the team total is at Sportsbooks. If it's a low number, I actually might bet the over on it right now. Let's see. All right. Seattle Mariners team total at books today is no, it just is absolutely thrilling radio, but at the same time too. I mean, if we could get value for the people, who doesn't want that? Yeah, I mean, I am surprised it's as low as it is. And the total in the game already only 8 runs. I do think that this is a spot that just general books and the public are sleeping on the Mariners offense. It's not been a bad offense this season at all.
I got about a 116 WRC plus for the day. That's like 4th or 5th best for the slate. I might have to just manually bump them up.
Yeah. By the way, their team total 4 runs is their over under today. I feel pretty good about that. I mean, it would have to be 3 for it to be a loss. If you get to, 4, it would be a push, anything over. So yeah, I think that over makes sense as well.
We're not rostering Rangers bats, correct?
No.
Boom. Astros and A's, 5.5 run implied total for the Stros, 3.1 for the A's. Luis Garcia, the pitcher, going for Houston. Adam Aller going for Oakland. We're not rostering Adam Aller. We are rostering a little bit of Luis Garcia, though. 13% owned on DraftKings, 9,800. A's aren't very good. Not the best strikeout matchup in the world, but that's okay. I will happily have some Luis Garcia, but I do think he is miles behind Max Scherzer and Carlos Rodon.
Yeah, we're getting a little bit of an ownership discount on him, but he's still really expensive. And when push comes to shove, when I'm building my lineups after this, I assume that it's just going to be the optimizer saying, like, why are we going to pay $9,800 for Luis Garcia when pricing never matters in DFS anymore for MLB because the pitching pricing is too low, the offense pricing, there's a million guys available for cheap. And realistically, I just don't think that I'm going to need the salary savings that come with Luis Garcia. And it's not like he's totally unowned, right? Still 14% ownership going there. So I'd just much rather play Scherzer or Rodon and find the few hundred extra dollars to spend up.
As would I. Have 9% Luis Garcia right now.
Yeah, and then talking about the FanDuel slate where there's more of a price discount, I still don't think it's necessary. And here's the other issue. He's more or less the same ownership as Rodon and Scherzer on FanDuel, and I don't know that I need even the $2,000 salary savings. So Rodon and Scherzer over Luis Garcia for me. Not that's the hottest take in the world, but that's where I'm at.
Astros bats, 5th in top stack, 4th in ownership. Most of that ownership going to Yordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker. Surprise, surprise. How do you feel about an Astros stack?
Adam Aller's terrible, and there's no real redeeming qualities about him either because he lets a lot of guys on base. He gives up a lot of hard contact. He's a 13.9% K rate. The Houston Astros are picking up some ownership here, but it's more or less warranted, like 8% ownership. I think that's about correct. It's not a team I'm going to say should be 15% owned or anything like that. So it's a team to get to, but the field is already getting there. So it all makes sense to me. I mean, Adam Aller, like I said, I don't think that he's any good as a pitcher at all. I would be fairly surprised if he's in the big leagues next year. So he's a pitcher to pick on. I generally don't like pitchers that are 27 years old and are rookies and have no history of being a high-end prospect. So target against him, but the field more or less is on the right ownership in this spot.
You loading up on Oakland today?
Hell no. I can't remember the last. I mean, there's individual slates where it's a 4-game slate. Oakland is no ownership, and there's high end pitchers that want to pay up for. But in general, I don't play Oakland A's offense.
Nor should you. What you should do, though, with the 700 people that are in here is hit that thumbs up. I'm not going to go crazy and say 150. I want 125 likes right now at this moment so that we can get it up to 150 later. So hit that thumbs up if you can. Helps us out a ton. Royals and Dodgers, 3.5 run implied total for the Royals, 5.6 for the Dodgers, Daniel Lynch and Tony Gonsolin. No one's going to Lynch. No one's really going to Gonsolin, and he's just in no man's land. 10,100. He is not as good as that price tag is, and he's not nearly as good as Max Scherzer and Carlos Rodon at a slight increase. I'd rather get to Luis Garcia. I'd rather get to George Kirby just because of salaries. To me, I find it very difficult to want to go to Gonsolin.
It's funny because there was a point in time where I always wanted to play Gonsolin because I thought he was good and he was always cheap, but the Dodgers would never let him pitch more than like 4 innings. And then he finally started to get stretched out. And there was a point where it was like, oh, cool. Like we could finally start playing Tony Gonsolin. And then maybe the only player that's really gotten aggressively priced up this entire season by the DK pricing algorithm, like Tony Gonsolin went from cheap to really expensive really quickly and never looked back. So he is 10,000 on FanDuel today. So same thing there. And then 10,100 on DK. I just can't pay that much for him because while he is a good pitcher, it's not like he's one of the better pitchers in baseball. And he's also been fairly lucky this year. He does have a 2.3 ERA, but a 3.47 FIP, a 3.72 xFIP. Zips has him projected for a 3.92 ERA the rest of the year. Steamer 4.13. He's a good but not great pitcher with somewhat limited strikeout upside. I just can't get to this kind of salary with him.
I agree. I don't have any interest in Lynch. Do you?
No, not at all. But I do have quite a bit of interest stacking against him.
Go for it. Number 3 in our top stack tool, 5th in ownership. Very much a positive leverage spot. I'm a little bit lighter in a top stack variety for the Dodgers, but obviously rostering the Dodgers is never something that I'm trying to avoid.
Yeah, I think the big thing here when it comes to Daniel Lynch is just how would we project him moving forward, because he was a really high-end prospect last year, and he has decent stuff, but that doesn't always mean anything for pitchers coming out of the gate because Lynch really struggled last year. He had a 5.69 ERA, 6.31 expected ERA. He's not been good this year, but he's been a lot better than last year, which, I mean, there was only one way for him to go. 4.79 ERA, 4.35 expected ERA, though. So there was a reason to think he's been a little bit unlucky. However, one thing that really does stand out to me is one reason that his underlying numbers are better than his actual ERA is because he's a 339 BABIP. And you might think like, okay, that's something that's going to normalize until you look at his BABIP. Every single place he's pitched throughout his big league career and minor league career, he's actually never at any level of the minor leagues had a BABIP less than 300. So he's always been a guy that gives up hard contact. And I kind of think moving forward, I'm just always going to have to expect that his ERA is going to be worse than his peripheral numbers based on that fact. In AAA this year, he only pitched a few innings, but he had 368 BABIP. In 2021, he made 12 starts in AAA and had a 390 BABIP. The year before in A-ball, he had a 324 BABIP. Rookie ball, 429 BABIP. So at a certain point, not that we would ever expect him to have a BABIP over 400, but I just think that it's reasonable to think he's a guy that's going to be like a 320, 330 BABIP guy at the major league level. And this is a team that could do a lot of damage in the Dodgers offense. We have them as being really underowned in the top stack stool. And I'm leaning towards this being my single entry team tonight.
I think that's totally reasonable. You're just never going to feel bad about having a Dodger stack. I think they line up really well here. The only downside for me, and what I think is pulling me a bit away from the Dodgers, is just how much power dies in Kansas City. Now, the Dodgers have 5 guys in their lineup that project a higher than 200 ISO via steamer. So maybe that doesn't matter as much. I could see them getting there with runs, but maybe not necessarily changing the slate with home runs. That's the only downside. The only thing that I could look at and think like, oh, well, if I had to point to something, because it's the Dodgers, they look really good.
Yeah, and then also very odd splits for Daniel Lynch, not just this year. This is for his entire career, something that kind of stood out to me. Pitching at home in Kansas City for his career, a 17.2% K rate and a 5.02 FIP. On the road, 23.2% K rate and a 3.92 FIP. He's been significantly worse pitching at home. Who knows what the potential reasons for that could be, but it's pretty big splits. The Dodgers are arguably the best offense from top to bottom in baseball. So at fairly modest ownership, this is the team that I want to get to in like that 7-8% range the most aggressively.
1, 2, 3. All right. Wait. 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, all right, one more to go before my next read. We're doing all right here, man. Cardinals and Brewers. Yeah, we'll open it back up once we get to Coors. 4.2 run implied total for the Cards, 3.3 for the Brewers. Jordan Montgomery and Eric Lauer. Lauer not getting any ownership because he is 9,500, and that is insane today. Jordan Montgomery is getting ownership because he's 6,800. That is also insane, just the opposite way. I think the Brewers are a totally acceptable offense. I have them at a 25% aggregate strikeout rate. Not that Montgomery's some massive strikeout guy, but I like the matchup from an upside perspective. And the real crux of all of this is that at 6,800, he doesn't really matter all that much. He's just, that price tag makes it so you don't have to care.
Yeah. And if you compare him to the other pitchers that we consider as SP2s on DK, there's Michael Kopech is 7,100. That's, kind of the chalky comparison point. I'd rather play Montgomery for the $300 salary savings and about half the ownership over Kopech if you're playing a really chalky offense. Like if you're somebody who, for instance, is interested in the Coors Field game, which a lot of people are, the two most popular offenses on the slate are Coors Field. Here's going to be the chalk build. Coors Field offenses, and then some combination of Scherzer, Rodon, Kopech. If you really want to play Coors Field, I think going from Kopech to Montgomery is one way to differentiate your lineup a little bit. I think that Montgomery, just based on our projections, top pitchers tool, there's no real difference between Kopech and Montgomery, but Montgomery's cheaper with significantly less ownership. So I like making that pivot in large field tournaments.
Totally makes sense. That's what you're going to need to do to get away from this ridiculous Rockies Diamondbacks game.
Oh, and by the way, I'm gonna add one thing here, just because I think this is a fair counterpoint, or at least reference to other content I did today, where Jay Miz said that I don't love the strikeout upside and that Josh didn't watch your betting video. Of course, Josh didn't watch my betting video. Like, why the hell would he? We all do a million pieces of content.
Yeah, I don't have time to watch our own shit.
But with that said, here's Jay Miz. Here's my rebuttal to that. Is that the over-under for Montgomery strikeouts this morning was 5.5, and it was plus money on the over. He's one of the cheapest pitchers on the slate today. So that's where there's a difference in how I would feel about him from a betting perspective versus a DFS perspective. He's $6,800 on DK with minimal ownership. That's different than somebody who's like, oh, I could get a pitcher who doesn't generate a lot of strikeouts for under 5.5 Ks at plus money. And he's now like minus 110 on the under. So it shows that there was some closing line value there.
Yeah, those are two different things for sure. If Jordan Montgomery is priced where he should be, which is, I don't know, let's just even call it 7,800. All of those same concerns that you have are still valid. He's just a worse DFS play. His price makes him good. If he were 4K, I wouldn't give a shit what you thought about his strikeout prop. Yeah. like when the price moves, that changes the decision point. If Max Scherzer were 13K today, I would barely roster him. Price is everything in DFS.
And he's a solid real-life pitcher. Everybody priced below him is considerably worse. Considerably. I mean, the guys immediately priced below him are Zach Davies, Daniel Lynch, Domingo Germán, Austin Voth, and Antonio Senzatella. Montgomery's a million times better than those guys. So
I got him at 16.4 fantasy points. Even if we want to just say I'm way high and it should be 15, that's still like 3 or 4 points better than anybody below him.
Yeah, he's just priced incorrectly on DK.
Alrighty, folks. Quick read for you guys. NFL preseason. It exists right now. If you are one of the people that like to watch it, and I assume that is the majority of people, I am very much in the minority here. I don't want to watch real football, let alone preseason football. However, if you use the promo code TUA, T-U-A, don't know why we picked Tua, the quarterback for the 10th best team in the AFC, but whatever. 75% off here. You can get our NFL preseason DFS projections for $5. $5. 5 smackaroos. $5 Rooskies. I'll steal people's gimmick. I don't care. $5 for our preseason projections if you use the promo code Tua. Click the link in the description of the video or go to stokastic.com/promos to check it out. You ready for Coors?
Let's do it.
So all the runs in the world for both of these teams. Both pitchers suck. Senzatella and Davies. If you want to roster either one of the pitchers, I'm going to leave the show. Let's start with this one. Diamondbacks are first in top stack, first in top value, first in ownership. Rockies are second, fourth, and second. I have a feeling you're going to tell me that you're going to be under on both of these teams. Let's start with Arizona. How do you feel?
So I'll say this to start, though. If you're playing cash games, you're probably almost only playing bats from this game. You're just playing Arizona bats, you're playing Rockies bats, you're playing Rodon and Scherzer on DK, FanDuel, your choice of either Scherzer or Rodon. There you go. Your lineup's built for you. In terms of large field tournaments, they're just over-owned. These are the two most negatively leveraged teams in our top stacks tool because it's a lot of ownership. They're combined to be in about the field stacking them about a third of the time in their lineups when they're combined with 25% top stack odds. They also have the two best top stack odds on the slate. So I don't think it's so much ownership that they're unplayable, but I do think it's enough ownership to the point that I'm going to be underweight to both of them. And I don't really see it as anything more complicated than that. The pitchers are both really bad. The offenses kind of suck also, particularly against right-hand pitching, but I don't think they're quite as bad as the pitchers. And then it's also the really favorable park factors at Coors Field. Neither of these guys are strikeout pitchers. That's problematic in Colorado. But at the same time, too, I don't want to play 20 and 15% of these offenses. To me, they should be closer to 10% owned.
So Diamondbacks are my biggest fade. That one's really easy. I'm not getting them as 5-man stacks or 4-man stacks. I am basically using them aggressively as filler, 3-mans, 2-mans, individual one-offs, because the run environment is good. Someone should do well for the Diamondbacks, and I do definitely want to have a piece of it, but I do not have them as a main stack. I am getting to the Rockies a bit. The price tags certainly work, but the real appeal for me for the Rockies, one, is facing Zach Davies for sure. Not that the Diamondbacks don't have that same sort of situation, but a little bit less ownership coming into Colorado. And I like the positionality of their first 5 hitters: outfield, short, second, first, third. Very easy to stack up this team. Only guy that I'm not really getting to is Sam Hilliard. I don't even know if he's actually in the lineup. I haven't seen any lineup since we started this show. No time for that stuff on this quick window that we had. So I am getting to Colorado bats. I probably get to Colorado bats too frequently in these situations. We'll see where that ends up shaking out, but I will end up being over on the Rockies. Doesn't make me feel good because of how much the people are there, but I'm not getting to the whole game like that. I made a stand. Go Rockies.
Yeah, I do like these bats as one-offs quite a bit, especially if the Dodgers, we have them as being one of the most under-owned teams on the slate. So if I'm going Dodgers, and then I don't think I have to be too concerned about ownership of secondary players in the lineup. So lower owned stacks that make a whole bunch of sense as secondary stack or as one-offs, but I am going to personally be underweight to both of these teams as 5-man stacks.
I mean, some of the pieces of this lineup, like, I don't think CJ Cron at 12% today against Zach Davies is all that crazy, or like Grichuk is, well, at least when I grabbed ownership last, I don't imagine it's changed much. Grichuk was at 9.6. Like, that's not a number that I need to get away from on this slate. When you get up to like the Montero being 19%, that's where I start to get a little bit like, we're starting to get high there. But these low, the 9 to 12 range, I don't find that to be overly chalky. Whereas the Diamondbacks are basically like 18 to 22 across the board.
Yeah, no, there's way more aggressive ownership on Arizona. If I have to pick one team to stack in this game, if people want to know which Coors Field team is preferable, it is the Rockies to me. And I mean, I don't think there's too much of a difference between the Rockies and Diamondbacks offenses in this game, at least not as much as the ownership gap between them.
2 more games to go. We are going to do this in an hour. We deserve medals for what's going to happen. But since we're not going to be able to get any medals, we will take likes. 175, in fact, would be great. That would be 32 more. There's 766 people in here. So go ahead, hit that thumbs up, take us up to 175. Angels and Twins. Patrick Sandoval and Tyler Mahle. Sandoval 6% owned. Tyler Mahle 13% owned. Which one of these guys do you want more?
Both of them. These are two of my favorite pitching options on the slate for large field tournaments, and it's for different reasons. So when it comes to Molly, it's because, well, neither one of them are picking up much ownership, but for Molly, it's the matchup. This Angels offense is so terrible. And I've gotten burned by betting under strikeouts for pitchers against them so many times in the second half of the season, mostly because we've gotten to a point now where pitchers' strikeout props get so inflated against the Angels. Like I saw a 7.5 out there for Tyler Mahle today. It seems like a big number, but it's hard to justify betting unders against the Angels because this offense is so shitty without Mike Trout and the players strike out so much. There's a lot of strikeout upside in him. He's only projected for 13% ownership right now on DK. I think that's a reasonable number to come over the top of, especially in some more popular stacks. So I like getting to him a whole lot. And then nobody's playing Patrick Sandoval at all. And I think he's a pretty solid pitcher.
I'm a little surprised that Sandoval isn't getting more love. I'm with the field right now, but at 7,500, I think that's pretty reasonable. He looks like a decent pivot if you're trying to get away from like the Clevinger ownership, or even if you want to just pay a little bit more and try to get away from like the Kopech ownership. I don't think that their range of outcomes is 4 times the ownership or 5 times the ownership.
No, in fact, we have Sandoval projected better and more likely to be in the optimal lineup today, or to be a top scoring pitcher than Michael Kopech. And Sandoval's numbers this year are better than Kopech's, especially from a strikeout perspective. He's a 3.41 ERA, a 3.1 FIP. His strikeout rate is 24.1%. Like across the board, all of the numbers for Sandoval are better than Kopech. Now, obviously, Kopech has an insanely good matchup against the Detroit Tigers, but it's somewhat minimized by the fact that Sandoval is better. So I really, really like getting to him against the Minnesota Twins. If you were asking me to pick one pitcher to go to in this 7,000, 8,000 range with everything being considered, ownership, projection, all that, Sandoval would be my number one guy to recommend.
I would not be recommending the Angels bats,
No.
that's for sure. And I don't really want to recommend the Twins bats all that much. I do think that they are basically properly owned at about 4% aggregate, 8th in our ownership, 9th in top stack.
Yeah, I have no interest in the offenses in this game. Really like the pitchers in large field tournaments.
Agreed. Ready to close this out? We might get there early. Giants and Pirates, 4.6 run implied total for the Giants, 2.8 for the Pirates. Bryce Wilson should not be mentioned again. Carlos Rodon, on the other hand, should be 10,600. Nice strikeout matchup against a crappy Pirates team. Second most expensive pitcher on the slate. Second highest owned pitcher on the slate. Flip a coin between Scherzer and Rodon. I think that's reasonable. I prefer Scherzer. I want to get them both. Rodon is definitely one of the two best options for today.
Yeah, cash games, you're playing Rodon and Scherzer on DraftKings. Just to reiterate, on FanDuel, it's build the rest of your lineup. Whoever you have, if you have the salary to get to Scherzer, like I was saying before, you play him. If you don't, Rodon, no big deal. They're both projected for comparable ownership over on FanDuel, and I think both of them are exceptional plays. I don't even know what else to add about Rodon. He's been really good this year. He has a good matchup against the Pirates. He's at home in a very pitcher-friendly ballpark. So I think Rodon, Scherzer, if you're playing a bunch of lineups, they certainly warrant being your two most rostered pitchers.
We definitely need to talk about the Giants bats before we leave here. They were 11th in our top stack tool, 3rd in value, which is driving up the ownership to 6th. A couple guys pulling some ownership. Brandon Crawford was, Belt was. I assume we don't have this lineup yet, given the start of the game, but I legitimately have not looked. How do you feel about the free Giants today?
It's my least favorite team in the league because it's like, oh, cool, Bryce Wilson's going to get the shit kicked out of him, and then he's going to get a left-handed relief pitcher is going to come in for him in the 4th or 5th inning, and then half of the Giants starting lineup is going to come out, and it's really annoying. The Giants could go eat a bag of dicks because it's my least favorite team to deal with in all of MLB DFS. Bryce Wilson's terrible. He's a 5.86 ERA, a 5.57 expected ERA. This is like as a replacement level player gets. He has been in the big league since 2019 or 2018. He has produced 0.2 wins above replacement. He is worth 0.0 wins above replacement this year. This is what a replacement level player looks like. But I just never know how to project the Giants when half their starting lineup is only going to play half the game.
Just to be clear here, everybody, nothing wrong with eating a bag of dicks. We here at Stokastic we find that perfectly reasonable. I don't want to demean anyone that would find that to be interesting. I agree. However, I do not want to roster the Giants. I think that might be better verbiage.
Yeah, if this team didn't pinch hit so crazy, like so much, I would love to get them in this spot, but I just can't. I hate rostering the Giants, and there's a lot of other teams to choose from, and they're picking up a bunch of ownership today.
We're not rostering the Pirates, right?
No.
45 seconds to spare. We're through it all. Give me your top stacks for today.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, we've got the time for a quick summary here. My favorite team relative to ownership is the Dodgers. My two favorite pitchers are Scherzer and Rodon, same as yours, same as pretty much everybody's today. And my favorite contrarian pitcher is Patrick Sandoval.
Favorite stacks, the teams that I'm going to be most over the field on: Red Sox, Blue Jays, Cardinals. I'm willing to get to the Rockies. I want to dodge the Diamondbacks. Evidently, my three biggest fades are the Astros, the Dodgers, and the Giants. Astros and Dodgers make me feel awful. So don't follow me for that one. But if you want to join me for Giants and Diamondbacks, happy to have you. Favorite pitchers, and then we're out of here.
Oh, I just read mine off. It was Scherzer and Rodon, and then
perfect.
It was,
wasn't listening.
Yeah, I figured as much.
I agree. Scherzer and Rodon, Clevenger, Kopech, Montgomery. I think the field is about spot on today. A couple of little spots where you could squeeze a little bit of value, but I do think the field is where they need to be. That'll do it. 6:0025. That is the time that I see. I think we nailed it. We got in here 5 minutes late. Thank you to everybody for hanging out. 161 likes. Hit the thumbs up now so that we can't give any credit to Emac and Terry, but that'll do it. Deeper dive in the books. Good luck. Enjoy your weekend. We're out of here. Peace.
All right, welcome in. Weekend time. One more day. It's a Friday, so we appreciate you hanging with us. And all we ask in return for your time is that thumbs up button, and make sure you're subscribed here, of course, to the OddsShopper channel. If you are already, then you can remind anybody in the chat, the comments below, just how much content we have pouring out here. And I'm told it's going to increase exponentially with football season arriving. So let's look at it. One leg yesterday busted the regular parlay. One leg yesterday, same leg, mind you, busted the supersize parlay. So again, you don't have to play these all in one parlay. You don't have to play the supersize parlay, which we're going to get to. You can play these individually. You can play these in a round robin. Overall, and I know it sucks for those who, like myself, played the parlay. Overall, we went 4 for 6 in the 3 legs in the regular and the 3 legs in the supersize. If you're new to what we're doing, I'm going to give you a 3-leg parlay in baseball. And then I'm going to supersize it, right? Just like you thought to yourself, yeah, you know, I want that burger, that drink. No. Let me get the largest 64-ounce gulp that you can get. We're going to do that here with the parlay. Oh, and by the way, I have $1,000 at least risk-free bet. I'm going to tell you up to $1,000. Least I can do is help you out with a risk-free opportunity at BetMGM. Speaking of which, that's where we start. And we'll begin with the Phillies-Mets game. Max Scherzer is going to be the talk here. Look, the strikeout prop is just too high at 7.5 or minus 150. The difference here, though, is outs. That's the first play on the regular parlay. Again, we'll build the regular parlay, then supersize it. Over 19.5 outs for Max Scherzer. I can get 7-8 innings out of Max Scherzer tonight without a doubt against this Phillies lineup. I just don't think the Phillies, especially without Kyle Schwarber, and I'm anticipating that with the calf injury, he does sit against Scherzer. Of all people, why not take the night off? This is not going to be a lineup that is going to electrify Queens from a visiting standpoint. I don't anticipate truly the Phils to get to Scherzer the first 2 times through, the occasional bop here or there. Also, we know that it's Max Scherzer, and we know that any struggle early on, he's not going to get yanked after 5 if he had a really bad second inning and things are starting to look a little shaky. So I know that Scherzer, and I know that the matchup against the Phillies, and on top of that, just the amount of rope that he can get following a bad, rough inning is going to definitely play to my favor here at minus 125. I'm okay with it. The hold is the hold. It's what we deal with. But the K prop, people may think, well, yeah, he's going to be lights out. Scherzer's going to be fine tonight, but to get to 8Ks at minus 150 on a longer outing, which I'm anticipating.
All right, Stokastic, here we go. It's your old pal Emac coming to you on a Friday, a rare weekday appearance for me. I'm assuming somebody must be on vacation, but I am reunited with my good friend Terry McBride, T McB. What is going on, Terry? It has been like 100 years since we've done a show together.
It's just been way too long since we've been on together for sure. So we've been, I think, both looking forward to this one. And I think we got a good slate to go through. This looks like an interesting one. I'm getting to some cool looking, good looking, interesting lineups. There's a lot of pitching today. Got a nap in this afternoon. It's been a hell of a good day so far.
Very nice. Usually that's my role, getting in naps before show or before slates lock in, and I'm frantically messaging Terry, what are we doing with the weather? Is there any issues?
Yeah, it was a bit of an unplanned one, but at least I did it with plenty of time to spare. It wasn't one of those ones where I'm waking up 3 minutes before the show and like flipping the covers off and checking lineups as we're starting up the show. We're all good today. I knew I was on the air today, so we're set. We're prepared.
All right. We got Josh's dad and uncle comments already. Seth Hader wants to know why people are thrilled to see me. It's me. That's why, Seth. You know this. You know this. Seth, just for you, we're going to talk about some 9-hole hitters today and how their home runs count the same as the fantasy-wise as they do at the rest of the positions. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about
more
Hunter.
9 hitters than anybody else out there. So.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about Hunter Renfroe, both of them, the wide receiver and the baseball player. It's going to be a good one, Terry. It's going to be a good one. But we're brought to you guys today by OddsShopper. They are the sponsor of the show, the sister site for Stokastic here. You guys definitely want to check them out. It's free as long as you've signed up with your email, or I just go in through Google or Gmail, I guess, and you can see all of the output of the DFS models populating into various player prop models. Very, very helpful. It also has parlay builders where you can design the style of parlay that you're looking for. Even our buddies over there at Prize Picks, it'll quickly put together the 5 best prize picks for you. They are not sponsoring our show, but you can still get $100 from them, from us, using the promo code AWESOME with your first deposit. But it's a lot of fun over there. The only downside I have is now I'm on a show, so I can't do sports wagering on my DK site because I'm in Zoom. It doesn't like that. But I brought my phone. Oh, look, my dog. My dog's on the phone.
So I think it makes Zoom makes it think that you're like using a VPN or something.
Yes.
Betting from a different state. That makes sense.
Yep. So
or
I've
like
learned to
be on Zoom with me and I could be saying like, yeah, bet that one. Something like that.
Something like that, or somehow controlling another. You could be controlling this screen with your whatever. I don't need to get in there that badly. But I've learned sometimes it times me out or it doesn't like it, and then it affects the DFS site. So I've learned when I'm in Zoom, I just don't. I open it in a different browser, so I know not open that browser. But the nice thing about OddsShopper, one, you can sort by a variety of different things. You can look at the state where you're in, where sports wagering is available. You can sort by best ROI, which takes into account the vigorish or the expectation of the win. That's the expected ROI. It's a lot of fun. You can also use this if you're using, as I mentioned, Prize Picks or No House Advantage or any of the other sites, Underdog, that have these sports parlay or sports wagers, player props that you can turn into parlay cards. So it's a lot of fun. But let's talk baseball tonight, Terry, because hey, baseball, always a good time here. My Mariners, can they make the playoffs for the first time since 2001? And my other team, the Nationals, potentially being the worst team in the history of ever. But here we are. We've got a Remember Me game coming in from both Josh Bell and Juan Soto. I think they are familiar with the batter's eye there in Nationals Park tonight. We'll talk about that. But get us going here on the pitchers. We have a plethora of top-end talent. We've got plenty to pick on here. This is like a tournament dream. Oh, yeah, and there's Coors Field. And there's 3 different teams that are easily the counter move to Coors Field if you feel the popularity is settling too much on any one team. We've got everything in this slate and more. What do you like for the pitchers? Scherzer, Rodon, what else we got?
Yeah, like I said, I just think it's a really interesting, really good, deep kind of a slate. There's a few spots that I really like the looks of the hitting. One of them was the one that you were just touching on with the pods. Basically, the pods and the Astros are just ripping the top off of my home run model. And then there's a bunch of other teams that project really well. But if we're looking for power, like I'm all over those two stacks. It was the first thing I built this morning. They click together really well. I love it when I build a placeholder and everybody turns out to be in the actual lineup. So like I said, we're rocking and rolling going into this slate, which will probably just spell disaster and 0 for 150 even cashing lineups, but hey, that's why we play. Carlos Rodon up at the top of my board in terms of pitching projection. Love the spot for him going up against the Pirates. There's going to be a ton of people there. You're definitely paying a fair and accurate price for Carlos Rodon, one of the best strikeout pitchers in the league, going up against one of the best targets in the league. So I love that spot. Max in a worse situation going up against the Phillies. The Phillies have been, playing some red hot baseball since getting rid of Joe Girardi, even without Bryce Harper there. They've been projecting out great. Max is suppressing their projections for me, but they're knocking him down a peg. He projects out third. I actually have Luis Garcia projecting between Rodon and Max Scherzer on my board. Very excited about that Luis Garcia spot as well. Very, very good pitcher going up against the Oakland Athletics, another team I've just been targeting all year long. And then we've got a ton of just mix and match good spots. Excuse me. Like Tyler Mahle going up against the Angels in a premium strikeout matchup. Excellent strikeout pitcher, a guy who can get dinged from time to time, but a very good top end strikeout pitcher in a very good matchup. I think Corey Kluber could give us something against the O's. Tony Gonsolin. There's a lot of spots. Michael Kopech against the Tigers. It's playing with fire a little bit with him, but I'm going to be going there just because of how bad that Tigers lineup is. So there's a lot of spots to spread ownership around to. It's going to be tricky deciding to go how much weight to the field and then how many shares am I leaving to go to the Gonsolins, Klubers, Mollies, Jordan Montgomerys of the world. There's a lot to do. Fortunately, there's a pretty good cutoff point as well where you can just be like, all right, these 9 pitchers I just don't need.
I'm assuming Austin Voth is one of those pitchers that you don't need, because I don't recall you mentioning his name. When I wrote the Spotlight Hitters and Top Stacks article this morning, he was someone I mentioned as the person that would be able to get you the other primary pitcher you would like on DraftKings, as well as doing a full Coors Field stack or any other 2 top end stacks that you would like. My call out for him, because I've talked about picking on him many times, is that when he was with the Nationals, they released him. He was picked up by the Orioles. The Orioles have basically asked him to throw his curveball a little bit more than he was with the Nationals. He's now, I think he just turned 30 or he's going to be 31. I forget. He was a Nationals draft pick from way back in the day. Yeah. He's been with them his entire career until they released him. Never quite put it all together. Had a good curveball, had decent spin on it and decent movement, but just nothing else ever worked out for him. And pitcher or hitters would just sit on his fastball, and that just never worked. He does get the park upgrade going into Tropicana Field. That's a plus on his side. But we can see so many other mispriced players, especially once you see all the offenses come in with all you need is 1 or 2 $2,500, $2,700 players, and then we don't need to go to the Austin Voths in this situation. So I'm not going away from him, but my last 2 crunches I did while I was waiting for the other guys to get done with their show did not have both, and I thought I would for sure. So that was the one surprise I saw. On the other side, I do like Kluber. If this game was in Camden Yards and in the warm weather, I might feel a little bit differently. But in Tropicana Field, the top half of the Orioles lineup is still pretty good. Bottom half does have power. They've got about 3 different guys there that can run into them from time to time. Just they don't do much else down there with like Mateo and some of the others. So it's one of those where there are so many other options here. If we're not getting a lot of people on the other side for the Orioles, which we're really not at all, is it really worth going for that differentiation with someone like Kluber for you?
So I just think Kluber's in a good spot to potentially pitch a good game with not that much ownership on him for what I think is a fair price. Like, he's one of the cheaper high-end pitchers, in my opinion, on this slate. So I think there's enough upside there going up against this Orioles team. It's not a spot where I'm really looking to go to the other side and grab Orioles stacks either. I think there's just enough in Kluber. Orioles ranked 21st in baseball with a 22.8% strikeout rate for the active roster against righties. They're 18th with a 99 WRC plus, so 1% worse than average, 19th by home run rate, 14th by ISO. So not a ton to really worry about here. Yeah, they do have guys who can run into it. I do like the top end of this lineup. I think they're going to be better in a hurry over the next couple of years. They're one of the up and coming young teams, but there's a lot of good opportunity for strikeouts. Like you mentioned, Jorge Mateo, interesting bat. He's hit 11 home runs this season. He's hit, like you said, he runs into the ball from time to time, a 173 ISO, 26 stolen bases as well. So he can rack up some individual counting stats, but he just doesn't get on base. For a guy who's stolen 26 bases, he gets on base 26% of the time, 267 OBP. He's just not on enough to really correlate well. So he's a guy I do like to target when I'm building Orioles stacks, but I just don't think these guys play all that well tonight. And that's going to lead me into, it's probably not going to be a ton of Corey Kluber, but I think if I'm sitting around, 5%, 8% to the field's, 0, 1%, I'm kind of happy with that. I think he's one of the more worthwhile guys. If we're shaving shares away from Rodon, Scherzer, Luis Garcia, I think he's one of the more likely guys that I'll land some of those shares on. Not an overwhelming amount, because I do want to get to like an even distribution of him, Michael Kopech, Tyler Mahle, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, see a couple familiar names there in chat. We got Malakar. Wonder what he's cooking up tonight. Always throwing out some intriguing dinner options when he's in chat. You've got Neil Orfield, who has now joined Awesemo full-time here. You're going to get all of his good stuff throughout the NFL, MLB, and wait for NBA season. So that's going to be a lot of fun having Neil here on a lot more shows and other content. You've got Stephen Leibowitz, who is wishing us a happy Eovaldi Day. We like that. Or probably happy Eovaldi Day. Got to say it correctly there. And then Sotex, as I like to refer to, So Toxic, has said he is going to ride with Austin Voth. I will have a little bit just because I wrote him up. I always feel like I need to go that route just because when I put pen to paper or pixels to digital paper in this case, I like to play my picks because I spend time researching these.
So you'd be more enthusiastic about Voth at 6,100 than trying to find 700 more for a Jordan Montgomery against Milwaukee and higher up the board there?
Let's see who plays for Milwaukee. Would that be Hunter Renfroe? Are you trying to get me to talk about home runs already? Why, yes, I would like Hunter Renfroe as a home run. That's for you set there in chat. Terry set you up for that one. For me, I'm still okay going with Austin over Jordan Montgomery. I do respect the Milwaukee Brewers. I think they have enough headaches with their right-handed hitters with Renfroe. I haven't pulled their lineup up. I'm assuming McCutcheon's in it. Willie Adames is probably in there as well. So those are the guys that strike a little fear in my heart when they are going against lefties. Let me see that lineup here. Boy, it's fun when you have
you got Adames, you got
26 teams,
you got Brasso in there too.
That's what I was looking for to see.
Keston Hira. Yeah, they loaded it up with righties.
All right.
I mean, we're talking, Jordan Montgomery, good pitcher. He's a guy we talk about a lot of the time being a better pitcher than he is a DFS option. I just think he's cheap at 6,800. That's a little low. Like he's an $8,000 pitcher on DK. He's 8,500 on FanDuel, projects out kind of like middle of the board. He's like he's the bottom of the top third of the board, let's say. So he projects out all right. I don't know that I'm going out of my way for him at 85 on FanDuel, but I think 68 on DK, he'd be my value guy, even with a little bit of weight of ownership on him, 19, 20%. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with walking hand in hand with the field on some of that. For 300 more, you can go to Michael Kopech. So I just think there's better options than a really low-end Austin Voth. It might just be because Voth is the dead last in my projections. So I might be just a little nervous, but looking at the board, projects out with a 3.8% probability of being a top two. That's, bottom third of the board here. I think we can do a little bit better by grabbing a little bit more money. I think we're just more likely on the Montgomerys of the world.
All right. So that's a good point. With Montgomery in St. Louis tonight, it's going to be in the upper 70s, low 80s for this game. So it's about 15 degrees cooler than what we had been seeing for the last couple of weeks. So that's a nice one. Slight breeze coming in from right field. Most of the West Coast and Midwest venues are 10 to 15 degrees cooler than what they have been the last few days. So that's a little tick towards the pitchers, but not much. Nothing like it is during the spring for these guys. Tyler Mahle, Patrick Sandoval at 7,500 going against the Minnesota Twins. The Minnesota Twins have several good hitters at the top with Buxton, Correa, Miranda just absolutely been on fire. Jorge Polanco, the switch hitter, of course, but then they fall off rather quickly here. Alex Kirilloff is out. He had wrist surgery again for the second season in a row. I thought I would be a little more afraid of going with Sandoval. The $7,500 price does kind of aid my concern there. If he was 8,500, where he probably should be priced, I would not be going that route. You do have Tyler Mahle at 8,500 himself, going the other way against a horrible Angels lineup that is loaded with strikeouts and a slumping Jared Walsh, who has slid all the way down to 6th. That's quite a departure from where he had been for a lot of the season. How do you like those two teams squaring off in Anaheim? It's actually a little bit warmer in LA than it normally is for some of the games that we've seen. It's going to be in the low 80s during the game.
Yeah, I like the pitching on both sides of this one. Patrick Sandoval, good pitcher, going up against a very good Twins lineup in terms of their ability to drive the ball, but there are strikeouts there for him for the most part. A lot of mid-20s type strikeout guys. There's a couple soft spots for strikeouts too. Jose Miranda under 20%. Gio Urshela is 16% for the season. Kepler and Sandy Leon both under 15%. So it's not the greatest strikeout matchup in the world, but he's not getting a ton of ownership. His $7,500 price is a nice cushy spot in terms of the price on DK. For 9,300 on FanDuel, if it was a smaller slate, that would be a spot where I'd be saying, ooh, I'm kind of more interested in Sandoval as the pay up guy where nobody's going. But I just don't think we need to do that today. Like if I'm spending 9,300, I'd rather put it in a couple different spots than tangling with the Twins here. If I had a few shares of it, I wouldn't totally run away from it. 24.1% strikeout rate, 3.85 xFIP, only allowed a 0.94% home run rate over 95 innings this year. That's very interesting. That can suppress some power on the other side. Tyler Mahle, I mentioned at the top of the show, think he's a nice price for 9,000 and not that much ownership on the FanDuel slate. 8,500 is a very good price for him. And he's drawing 12% ownership, which is probably not enough for the matchup that he's got here. Angels have been a targetable team for at least the second half of the season so far. A lot of strikeouts there, like you mentioned. Just looking at this Angels lineup, if we skip Fletcher in the leadoff spot and we skip Rengifo in the 3 spot in the projected lineup, then we're dealing with an average of a 31.2% strikeout rate across that lineup. That's the confirmed lineup. So there's 2 short sample guys in Jose Rojas and Steven Duggar at the bottom of the lineup that push that up a little bit, but we're talking about an aggressively bad team for strikeouts. And Molly's got a 25.8% strikeout rate for this season. He's been very good this year in terms of generating swing and miss. He's not walking that many guys this year. So I like the spot for Mahle. He can definitely get blown up from time to time, but not really the team that I expect to do it. So I think he's going to put up a nice start here.
All right. Got to give a hat tip in chat to Chuck Deuces. He says about Jared Walsh slumping from last year. Jared Walsh needs John Walsh to find him. Hat tip for it was America's Most Wanted. That was the John Walsh hosted that series for a long time. So good one there. We'll call out some good ones in chat. We like to see some contributions here. Please do hit that like button. It helps us out. How Josh Engelman, of all people, did not get us to 200 likes. Come on. Let's crest right on over that. We're about a dozen
double
away.
Up their number just out of the gate here. We've been on for 20 minutes. We've given some analysis, but we'll really hit our stride once you guys double that number up. And it should be done already. I mean, come on.
Yeah, absolutely. We've also got some preseason going on. Big weekend for preseason football here. You got, of course, have Matt Gajewski as I'd say the little engine that could. Matt Gajewski's pretty yoked. So he's like the engine that runs all of the preseason NFL here. But you can get our $5 preseason projections by using the promo code TUA, as in Tua Tagovailoa. That is Tua, TUA. That will get you your DFS preseason projections for just $5. We also have some free content today. We've got the MLB top stacks. So that's something that you can, I believe that's free. Sorry, it's a little hard to see this read here. But the other thing that we do have for free is the BetMGM $1,000 risk-free bet. Make your first deposit and you can bet up to $1,000 choosing a risk-free bet option, meaning if you lose, they're just going to give you site credit back. So yes, you ultimately still go through the $1,000 on their site, but you get to take one swing for the fences and then you get second chances. And if you take that wager out of the yard, as they say, get that money out of the account and into your pocket. But you can get on over there at BetMGM. You can click through the link in the video description below to claim your $1,000 risk-free bet. Anything else you want to talk about here for the pitching? There's 26 of them. I
know there's a lot, and there's a lot.
So
of
let's parse out the tippy top.
Say again.
let's parse out the tippy top. You've got Rodon, you've got Scherzer, anybody else you want to put in their class, not Tony Gonsolin. You have George Kirby, who is a little bit spendy considering the Mariners are trying to monitor his minutes, not shut him down. They want his arm for the postseason. He's been one of their top 2 pitchers for the majority of the season. But 9,200, a little bit of risk in that one for him. You've got, you mentioned Luis H. Garcia. There's a chance we could see all 3 Luis Garcias in action tonight. Wouldn't that be fun? I'm trying to get all of them on one of my season-long teams, and I only have Luis H. Garcia on one. So it's, and somebody else picked up the reliever Garcia. I'm like, so I've got the middle infielder and the pitcher. Should I make just an obscene trade to get them just so I can have all 3?
I think you have to at this point. Yeah, if you've got 2 of them, you have to complete the Triforce there and get all 3. So yeah, I like that move. But I tend to, when we get these slates where there's 3 Luis Garcias going, I tend to just zero out the other 2. I just change their names to like Tuis Garcia and Fuis Garcia, so that just the Luis Garcia who pitches for the Astros, who's my number 2 pitcher on the board today in terms of my projection, who costs not nearly enough for the spot here, who's probably not drawing enough ownership. That's the guy I want to come up when I do sorts and everything and not have to worry about the names, the naming conventions, any of that nonsense. So he's definitely targetable here. And then the other guy that we kind of short sold is Michael Kopech, just based on the matchup. You heard Greg say it earlier. The Tigers this year against right-handed pitching have been just like historically bad when we're talking about like the last decade of baseball in terms of their ineptitude and the ability to hit the ball, drive the ball, not strike out or anything. They're just bottom of the league across the board. Kopech has been, I don't want to say a disappointment, but there's been some growing pains. 11.7% walk rate, only a 20.8% strikeout rate for a kid who's supposed to be a top end strikeout pitcher with just, amazing stuff. That's a little disappointing, but I think there's enough talent in that arm that any given day he could come out and have a very nice start here against the Tigers. He's drawing a little bit of attention. I wish he was going a little under owned here, but I think it's still a good enough spot that I'll get to at least some shares because he helps you build some interesting lineups. This was my pitcher in the placeholder when I put the Astros and the Padres together this morning. So go Michael Kopech. Would you get to any like Jose Berrios here? Would you get to any?
No, and I've been waiting for
Eric Lauer.
Yeah, I wanted Jose Berrios to get picked on by Baltimore, and then that game got rained out. I think he's a little bit fraudulent. He still carries enough name value, and he gets enough games here and there with 7 strikeouts and looks solid. This is all keeping his price and salary relatively low. People continue to go to him. There will be spots we want to do that, but in a warm environment against a good offensive team, the answer is no. Now, today, the slate is so large, I just really didn't have a need to call him out as someone that I wanted to pick on.
Yeah, I think he's actually sneaky targetable with some of these Cleveland bats because they're coming in kind of cheap and they're super low owned. And
so like Josh Naylor was my call out, one of my 5 single bat call outs in my article today. Naylor.
All right. Cleanup 3,300 for a cleanup hitter, first base and outfield on FanDuel, first base only on DK for 4,100, 1%, 0.5% ownership. Yeah. That's the kind of play we've kind of got up and down this lineup. And like you were saying, Berrios can go out there and strike out 7-8 guys in any given game, put up a good start, give up, just 1-2 runs, suppress the other team. He's got talent. He's been a good pitcher at points in his career, but really he had one spike where he was very, very good. And then he's been a lot of league averages kind of years. And that's about what he is this year. 21.1% strikeout rate, a 4.06 xFIP. What I really want to target here and why I think the Guardians are somewhat playable is he's given up an 11.7% barrel rate this year, 44.8% hard hit and a 4.72% home run rate. That's targetable for power upside. Last year, it was half that in terms of the home run rate. The hard hit was still high. The barrel was still high, but he's been struggling with some premium contact this year. So I think throwing some Guardians bats at very low ownership at Berrios could be an interesting spot here.
All right. Let's just quickly look through and see. Oh, one other pitcher I'm okay taking that we didn't really get into, and this would be Mike Clevenger. And I've messaged you. I have talked to it about this with Greg. I've talked to you about it with Lindquist. And I am convinced that the Washington Nationals will be no hit at some point between now and the end of the season. Clevenger, I don't think will have the pitch count to get there. I even looked ahead in the schedule and I was giving names to Terry saying, oh, here's who I think potentially could get them for this. But I do like him at 7,800 in this matchup. The Nationals have just the 3.4 implied run total. As I mentioned, it's much cooler in Washington today. It barely got to 80 degrees today. I'm about 35 miles away from the stadium. So it barely got to 80 degrees today, which is a nice departure. The humidity has been quite down. Half of what it was, because we've had a lot of thunderstorms in the area, both here and up in Baltimore. And we've seen that, the Phillies and what the Phillies did to the Nationals pitching staff last weekend. So the Mike Clevenger call is pretty good. I think the win, he's definitely he should be able to get through 5 innings. We get a little questionable when we get to 6 and the quality start bonus, which we need over on FanDuel. The strikeouts kind of come and go. It's not quite what it was after he had that second Tommy John surgery, but he's still pretty solid, right? Mm-hmm. So I think he had 2 Tommy John surgeries. In any event, there are a lot of baseball pitchers to remember at this point in the season. In any event, going against a lineup that is basically anchored by Luke Voit and Nelson Cruz, not really a lot to worry about. Yadiel Hernandez, you think, oh man, this kid's batting cleanup. It must be great. No, he's in his 30s, so no, he's not a young kid. Keibert Ruiz, solid, rookie catcher, having some growing pains. And then Joey Meneses is, I think he's actually got the potential to be something, but if I remember correctly, I think he's still only 20 or 21. So you've got some really young players there. Nelson Cruz, you could probably add 2 of the starters' ages together and not be as old as Nelson Cruz. So this is a lineup that is kind of the afterthought, shall we say, of the league. So picking on them going to be something we do. Let's use this as the leverage point. Juan Soto, Josh Bell, Remember Us? A Remember Us game? When have we had a Remember Us game before?
Yeah, that is, like I mentioned, they're just number one on the board for me in terms of the power upside with a bullet. Corey Abbott over his 12 2/3, and it's a little unfair to point to this, but over 12 2/3, 8.47% home run rate. I think that was 5 home runs to 59 hitters faced so far at the major league level this season. There's just a lot of power potential here. 13.2% barrel rate so far. By the way, he's also only struck out 18.6 and walked 13.6, 6.56 xFIP. Definitely targetable for Padres stacks. And it's been a team that, through the season, I haven't really been going to all that much, but now there are definitely some bats that I want to include in my lineups here. Totally changed lineup. A guy that is sneaking past the field, partly probably because the field is still not comfy paying this price for him, but the 5-hitter, Brandon Drury, 2.3% ownership for 5,500, first and third base eligibility on DK, 3,700 under 5% on second base and third base for 3,700 on FanDuel, 22 home runs on the season, a 247 ISO, 28% better than average creating runs. Brandon Drury changed his swing plane deliberately this season, and it has paid major dividends for the guy. Got traded to the Padres. Now he's in a great situation. He's already played well for them since he's gotten there. Love the spot for him. And I think you can stack this team at least 1 through 7, get down to some Jake Cronenworth, some Ha-Seong Kim, who are both fairly low owned on both sites. Trent Grisham, Austin Nola are also both playable. Grisham struggling through the season, 195, 292, 357, 12% worse than average creating runs. Still does have a little pop, 13 home runs on the year. Austin Nola as a cheap catcher, not that much ownership on DK, probably a DK only kind of a spot, but at least 1 through 7, I think I'm going to have a lot of Padres stacks.
All right. Chat appropriately calling me out. That is Steve Miner. I've conflated names in my mind. Joey Meneses is 30 years old. He is a rookie, but he is 30 years old. I read this great article, and this is what we hang our hats on here. Get it? Hang our hats, all of my Nationals hats on. Nice article talking about the Nationals team in 2025, and they were pulling in all sorts of names from the farm system, and then the names they got from the San Diego trade. And I had thought he was one of the one they were projecting as a cleanup hitter who was moving to third base because he was going to end up outgrowing in the middle infield position that he was in. My apologies for that. Clearly, that's who we have in the heart of the lineup. More Clevenger.
In Yadiel Hernandez's defense, he was held back by the Cuban government until he was in his 30s, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So that's why he's a little old for a guy you don't necessarily know. I actually like his bat. I think he's an interesting hitter, but just kind of miscast as a cleanup hitter in this lineup. You know, he should be a 6-7 hitter for somebody, but you know, it's semi-capable stick for the dead minimum for 2,000. But yeah, I think good reasons to go to Clevenger. I just don't need him for 9,100 on FanDuel. He's drawing 5% ownership. I don't love that. 17% for 7,800. I think that's reasonable ownership and a reasonable price for Clevenger here. And like you said, you're getting a little bit of a tax in terms of the upside for innings pitched and the upside for the quality start. So yet another reason, in addition to the price, to maybe not consider him on FanDuel, but make him look a little stronger on DK.
All right, we have a fly in our house, and somehow it decided to come into my office after I've already closed the door. And so when you see me going wildly gesturing or smacking something, I'm trying to get this. It's been 3 days. I thought they didn't live that long. Yet here we are, 3 days with the same damn fly, annoying the hell out of me here. It landed on my forehead, which a lot of space to land on my forehead, but it doesn't feel good when something's doing that.
No, definitely not. You get that. Who was that? That was
Mike Pence.
I was gonna bring it up, and then I said, oh, that'll just get political in chat or something. But yeah, when the fly was just dead on his forehead.
All right. Oh, yes. Yotastic, our buddy Mike is saying I'm going to go full Jeff Goldblum soon. Boy, while I like Jeff Goldblum, not from The Fly. That was like, when did that movie come out? Like 86, 87, 88, somewhere around there, late 80s?
I was going to say like 85, 86 probably.
Like it just landed right there. Someone's going to get a screen grab of this, and it's going to be a problem. All right, back on task here. So looking at some of the alternative options on offense, I think the Dodgers make the short list today, non-Coors Field edition. I definitely think the Astros are a team to consider. How are you feeling about those two? Anything else you want to bring in here as we still are waiting on 3 lineups?
Yeah, I'm getting a bunch of Dodgers lineups. I was saying it just as we were coming onto the air. I had just dropped my sword into the tool here, and the Dodgers were coming up quite a bit for me. And I hadn't really thought too much about them. Just in terms of, I always consider the Dodgers a good option. They're a very good team. But when they popped up, I was like, oh wait, let me take a look at why I'm getting to a lot of Dodgers, and it makes a hell of a lot of sense. They rank out very well in our top stacks tool. They're going up against lefty Daniel Lynch, who capable pitcher but targetable. 1.52 WHIP on this season. 22.9% strikeout rate around league average, 8.8% walks a few too many, but he's not terrible. 4.20 xFIP. I just think his hard hit rate is targetable. 82 and 2/3 innings, 47% hard hit rate for a team like these Dodgers. Don't strike out that much, put bat on ball like crazy, and have some very, very good power hitters. I think that's a targetable spot here. So I'm happy to get to some Dodgers. And there's some low owned bats in that lineup. Freddie Freeman in this matchup. I don't care that it's lefty. It's Freddie Freeman. And he's 3% owned, 4% on FanDuel, 3% on DK. That's just silly. Justin Turner, 2.8%. Chris Taylor, 3.7%. Some capable right-handed bats in the middle of the lineup there. Also low owned on the FanDuel slate. Not that expensive. So it's easy enough to build Dodgers stacks, especially on FanDuel where they're, I would say, cheap. And they're low owned enough toward the bottom of the lineup. So they make a ton of sense. And then the Astros were the other team. It was the Pods and the Astros that just jumping off the page in terms of my home run model here. And it bears out in our stacks tool. So we've got the Coors game. Obviously that game is the top of the board in terms of expectation of run creation, in terms of top stack probabilities. But we're talking about the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Astros as the next 3 teams right on the board, all drawing single digit ownership by comparison to 2 teams that are both well below average, creating runs in the split that they're against. Yeah, they're at Coors Field. These are 2 bad baseball teams, and they're drawing 22.5 and 16% ownership, respectively, on the DraftKings slate in the Diamondbacks and the Rockies. So I think just pivoting from bad baseball teams in a good field to good baseball teams in great matchups seems like a really good option here. So I'm going to have a lot of Dodgers, Padres, and Astros stacks here in my lineups.
All right. In premium chat, John Poe put a nice little picture. Staying with the baseball theme, Jeff Passan doing a video hit with the fly sitting right on his forehead. So well played there. Well played there. All righty. So what else do we have here that is fun today? Let's go look at the little run sheet here, because I got to keep doing ads. I've been told I got to keep doing ads till we get to at least 250 likes. So you guys are almost there, but we're going to do.
We can pay the bills with ads. We can pay the bills with likes, with thumbs up, guys.
One of two ways.
You
Or
you want to like the thing.
we can put those hands together and give everybody a great deal. Because if you use the promo code MLB Live, that's one word, 8 letters. MLB Live, you get, wait for it, it is 7 letters, but you get 50% off any 1 week package if it is your first 1 week package here at Osmo. You want to get the premium for half off, knock yourself out. You want to go with the NFL, or pardon me, MLB right now, go for it. You want to get those last little moments with the FedEx Cup here as golf winds down before they get into their, I forget what the winter season, then the short season, then it's the early season. Golf never really turns itself off, but there's only really a couple more weeks there. You can get a week off that, whatever you would like. I would go with the full package there and get the 1 week premium. That's a nice deal, but that is promo code MLB Live. And then tomorrow, since we're only at 244 likes, tomorrow we've got MLB strategy tipping off, or first pitch, shall we say. The first pitch will be the first ad at 11 o'clock. And then at noon, we have the NFL preseason live before lock. That is going to be Neil Orfield and Matt Kajeski. 3 o'clock, we're going to get Pete the Heat Rogers. Special guest host, third leg Greg Ehrenberg will be making his semi-regular appearance covering for Jason Floyd there, this time on the MMA show. And then MLB Live before lock, you're going to get Terry and Sundacker. Did you see Gundacker's pictures he posted? He had sun poisoning of some. I am assuming he went outside and got the mail. He usually only leaves his house under the cover of darkness, but he looks pretty
opened
scary.
The window and just like a vampire. Oh no, poor guy. I hope he doesn't show up and have to have all white face, cream, and like Marlon Brando in Island of Dr. Moreau.
There is a chance that this pairing may be the live before lock pairing tomorrow night as well, if Sundacker does not recover in time.
If he's out there, Gun, I hope you feel better, buddy, and I hope you make it in time for tomorrow. But if not, Emac.
No, we got you covered. We got you covered. No worries there. You get to make the call. So what do we got? We got 21 minutes left until we're sort of done. You've got 26 minutes until lock. And then we've got a whole lot of offenses to talk about. So we kind of started hitting at the upper end. Any leverage type situations that you're looking for, anything we want to call out, as we recently got the Twins lineup. We're just waiting on Pittsburgh. We're not really going to play them. Oh, I'll lead this one off. And San Francisco. So here's the interesting thing about San Francisco. They're going to run mostly left-handed lineup. Now, the downside of that is they will pinch hit their people when a right-hander, when a left-hander comes in from the bullpen when they start off going against right-handed starter. Now, Pittsburgh only has 2 lefties in their bullpen. Neither one, you don't really need to worry about their names. One of them hit pitched 3 times in the last, or today would be, if he went again, would be the 4th time in 5 days. I don't think he's going to go, but the other guy hasn't pitched for 2 or 3 days. So they've got one in there. All they need to do is put that person in, and they're going to end up pulling Tommy La Stella and probably Lamont Wade and potentially Jacques Peterson. But safe plays for the lefties, Brandon Belt. I would think Jacques Peterson's probably going to be relatively safe today. And then Yastrzemski. So those are the guys I'm looking at, and probably Brandon Crawford. They're not really going to move him out of the lineup for his glove. So you can get discounted options, not that we need them on the main slate, but on the late slate, they open literally everything up by going to those guys. And then you can easily go with Carlos Rodon and Tyler Mahle if you so choose, and then pick some of the premium bats. So that's sort of my call out. They're kind of a stay away on the main slate. We don't even need to get crazy, but Bryce Wilson, bad. Very, very bad. Not who's that other kid? Aller. He's not as bad as Adam Aller, but he's close. He's close.
Yeah, some targetable pitching on this slate, and he's one of them for sure. I just don't love the ownership, and it looks like it's come down a little bit, but you're getting like Brandon Belt on FanDuel, 22.5% ownership, but then you've got him surrounded by La Stella and Lamont Wade, who are pulling much lower ownership. Jock Peterson only 11%. So maybe we can get there, but you run into the pinch hit situations with this team, especially if we're expecting Wilson to get blown up, get into a bullpen after only a couple innings. They start mixing and matching. It's just a team that I don't love getting to when they're getting some popularity. I'll have some and I'll be mix and matching some of the guys that, like you were saying, might stay in the game a little bit longer, but it's not my favorite spot on the board. I just think there's other situations where, it's different in terms of the price that you're paying for these bats. If you go to a team like the Yankees against Eovaldi, anytime the Yanks are 1.8% owned, I think that makes some sense to start looking at. It's a positive leverage situation. They're our 6th or 7th ranked overall team with a 5.4% probability of being the top stack. In terms of the top of the board, let's say the top, 10 teams here, that 5.4% plays pretty favorably with everybody who's not Arizona, Colorado, Los Angeles, or San Diego. Everybody else is 6.5% or lower. So I think they play pretty well. And the Blue Jays are in that bucket. The White Sox are in that bucket going up against. It's just a good spot going up against Danny Norris there for the White Sox. The Blue Jays against Cal Quantrill, I think, is very gettable for 2% aggregate ownership. There's just better teams that I think are going to have guys that play the full game reliably that I'd rather stack. I think Josh mentioned the Red Sox on the previous show going up against Domingo Germán. I think that's another good spot. I don't believe at all in Domingo Germán. So interesting situations there. One of the reasons I think Eovaldi is targetable in that game is just the hard hit and the home run rate that he's given up this season going into that Yankees lineup with no ownership on them. I know they've been cold. No, they haven't really been winning ball games or hitting the ball outside of Aaron Judge like they had been, but there's still a tremendous amount of pop in that lineup. Eovaldi for the season over 93 2/3, 5.04% home run rate, 46.3% hard hit, 11.1% barrel. Those are Adam Oller level numbers. That's targetable.
How is your approach to the Coors Field extravaganza with all of the popularity? Will you come in under?
I'll probably be well below Coors Field today. It's just a situation where I'm not getting, I would rather go to good teams in interesting situations against bad pitchers than just get overweight to bad teams because the ballpark is really good. I get why the public is going there. I'm not saying Coors isn't going to go off tonight. It probably will. The Diamondbacks will probably put up a ton of runs and be the necessary team to win tonight. That's the most likely scenario, but that's the scenario that everyone and their brother is chasing. I'd just rather thin out the herd by going in different directions, grab some of these teams like the Padres, like the Astros at much lower ownership, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the White Sox, the Blue Jays. Some of the best overall offenses in baseball are dramatically less owned and less popular than those teams are. So I'm happy to just grab my shares of those. And if I lose, I lose. And if I'm right, if the field is wrong, I don't even have to be right. The field just has to be wrong on Coors Field. And it can go off for, a 5-4 ball game, a 6-5 ball game, and still not be the most important game of the night with a lot of these teams on a big slate with a lot of clunky pitching. I think there's a lot of good reasons to get away from that weight at Coors Field. What are you doing with it?
I have now, so I do the double stack. So my single stack version here, because we have so many teams in action, I just start everybody off at 5%. Because I'm on air and because we're sort of running out of time and I know how Cruncher's going to go slow and I've got my computer plugged into the router. Jordan Klein somehow knows this is happening, sensing, and I'm surprised he doesn't text me. Yes, I've checked. No, I haven't gotten a new cord, so the clip's still not there and the router cord comes out, but I'm in on the router. So I'm going 7% on a few teams that I want more of, because then that would cap them at about 15%. I'm also capping all my players at 15% on the hitters. So what that'll do is kind of suppress me going completely overweight on any particular thing. But what it also does is it flattens out my player pool and it gets into some of these other games. So Colorado and Arizona, they're only going to be at 5% for me. Well, what does that mean? Well, when I'm standing there staring at Fantasy Cruncher, it's going to be making teams with those or lineups with those two teams until it runs out of the percentage. And then it's going to start going to the other teams. What did I put higher? I've got Milwaukee at 7, Houston at 7, the Dodgers at 7, Seattle at 7. They do. I think they are supposed to have Rodriguez back. I did not look at that. I think he's in the lineup again. And I've got New York and Boston going against each other, each at 7, because nobody's going to them, as you've mentioned. I've got Cleveland and Toronto each at 7, and then I've got San Diego at 7. So I'm going to hit crunch here, see what happens. But the goal is I want to get some of these other lineups as well. Otherwise, if you don't do parameters like this, you're just going to get Coors Field. That's what the optimizer is going to do. So we don't want to go that route. I did see that, which reminds me, there was one question in chat I wanted to answer. Someone was asking, when is the last player projection update? We'll update projections every time a new lineup comes in. There will be the occasional time where it's kind of a lineup off by itself. It comes in exactly how we projected it. Probably not going to update projections for that because it's already in there.
Yeah.
But
if there's
anytime
no change, it'll just,
if there's no right. So, but anytime a lineup is confirmed, even if players are moving positions, that's usually enough to change somebody by 1/10 of a point, which would make us run the projections again. Anytime there's a change or confirmation in weather, we're probably running the projection again. And then separately, the ownership projection is running is more or less independently of the player projections, but that's updating with every lineup. The ownership is updating one with every lineup, but two, as we get better information, as we get closer to the start of the game or whatever sport it is, that will continue to tweak. The last ownership projection got in basketball will go up to it within the last 5 minutes. There'll be something because there's always some crazy
within seconds of lock if possible. I mean,
Yeah.
there's also, bear in mind, a lot of the times the guys behind the scenes are using the projections that they're creating. So it's a matter of if somebody ends up scratching in baseball or not starting in basketball, and there's a major minutes change, it has, think of the downstream impact that has on not only that team, but the way that all lineups come together. So just, the best way to answer that is every time it's going to be important for you and every time you would want it to update, we're going to be behind the scenes updating it. It might not come out within seconds of when you reload that page, but think about, there's tens of thousands of people out there also reloading that page over the course of a few minutes. And for somebody out there, it'll be like right when they reload the page. So we get them out as quickly as possible.
Yeah. And then, if you use the Osmo version of Fantasy Cruncher, if you're hitting refresh, it's pulling in our projections for whatever the most current is. I have that so I can troubleshoot users' issues, but I also have regular Fantasy Cruncher because I've been beta testing stuff for them for years. So what I do is I generally use that. So I'm taking our stuff, downloading it, putting it up in there, and because I like to see how long is it going to take, what's going to go weird, because I'll get people asking questions about that. And then if something gets a little wonky on the Osmo version of Fantasy or Stokastic version of Fantasy Cruncher versus regular Fantasy Cruncher, I can see, hey, it's working on one, not the other, and then I can message those guys over there as well to give them some tips or help troubleshoot things right away. But if I'm willing to do that, even while I'm on a show, our projections are pretty good. They're updating pretty quickly, and it's a nice, easy way to do it. One last trick a lot of people may not know, and it took me like a year and a half to figure this one out. I saw Jake Hari do it on screen. I'm like, oh my God, I'm an idiot, and there's the fly confirming I'm an idiot sitting on my forehead there. Wait, I'm an idiot sandwich now. So what you have is there's a button there that allows you to look at columns. So what you can do is just unclick all the columns until you get to the player's name and the projection, and you just copy that. You don't have to download anything. You just copy that, paste it in Fantasy Cruncher or your optimizer of your choice, hit upload, you're in. It takes 7 seconds approximately. There you go. So. All right.
Good tip.
I got to start gonna hit crunch here. So I'm doing my pitcher. So I talked about the hitters. I'm going to do some pitcher percentages here, and then I'm going to let this thing chug along. So Max Scherzer, I like, phenomenal pitcher. It was very, very sad when he's no longer with Washington. Are you above or below the field? Josh said, I think he's well above the field. Nights like tonight, I want to kind of be a little bit everywhere here. So I'm going to set that at 35%. We currently, the last time I pulled the projections in, we had them at 42%. I'm going to go with 35% for Rodon. We have him at 38. Kopech, I'm going a little higher. I'm going to go 30%. That's a little bit above the field. I see Montgomery is at 20. And again, these percentages may have changed. So premium folks, you've got the accurate ones. Those of you that aren't premium, get behind the paywall here and you can get the perfect ones. It's probably plus or minus 1% or 2%. It's close enough. Montgomery, you've talked me into him. I'm going to match the field at 20. Okay. Tyler Mahle, I'm going
in exchange for some of your Brewer shares then? Or are you coming down on Brewers? Because you were more excited about that Brewer stack spot than I was.
But I'm making a few here and there. So now I'm going to have some of both. This is the Scumdacker, not to be confused with Gundacker or Sundacker. Luis Garcia. We see, you got to be careful. Luis H. Garcia, his projection doesn't like to come in. So I'm going to manually tweak that because I know about where I want to. I'm going over.
Very important to make sure you've got the right projection. As much as we joke about it, it does sometimes come through the wrong way where you're getting an 8-9 point projection on the pitcher. You're getting a 30-point projection on the hitter. You got to make sure that you're using the right Luis Garcia. You're getting the right code to get the guy into your lineups. Otherwise your lineups break. So kind of.
All right. So generally on DraftKings, you want to have about 220% pitching exposure. So it runs relatively smoothly. The closer you get to 200, the slower it's going to run because it's trying to find the perfect combination of all the other things that you've done. So you get more than 240, you might as well not even worry about the last dozen pitchers on the worst point per dollar pitchers. They're not going to go into your lineups. But I have 228 So I'm not going to get any of the low pitchers because I'm not even counting them. But amongst the 9 most popular pitchers, that's about where I'm standing. So that gives me a confidence that the crunch should run relatively quickly because a lot of people are pushing go on a Friday. There are a lot of teams, so it tends to run slower here. I've got the randomness on and all that fun stuff. So now I can start looking at chat. Chat, throw in some questions. We got a little bit of time here. We've got, T McBee, the man, the myth, the legend, fellow team head here. We can answer any of the questions you have. If you guys are in the premium Discord, if you at us, we will answer your questions as well. So that's the key thing here. I see Hockey Freak Sean is asking, is the weather looking good everywhere? Yes, it actually is. The only thing that's a little bit off is the weather is a little cooler than what we were expecting to see, but there should be no precipitation issues tonight.
Hey, how much Carlos Rodon are you getting to?
What did I say? I kept him at 35%. I'll get 35%.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pushing around that territory on FanDuel, and I'm trying to maybe come down on that and give some to some of these other guys. I love the spot. I want to have a lot of it, but I don't know that I want to be right there. Let me see where's the field at on the FanDuel.
I'm right at where the field is. My guess is he will end up being maybe a little bit higher than where our projections are. So I'm going to come in a little bit under, and that's something I do on a lot of these slates. Is I rarely will go way over on a pitcher. The leverage is just so much better if you get close to the field or even 10% less than the field and it goes sideways. All of a sudden, those are the nights where you 5, 6, 7x because you get a lineup that breaks free. And it's easier than doing that than going way overweight. And then the pitcher does horribly. You fall down with everybody else. You got nothing left that can come salvage your night. You're hoping to get, 50, 60% of your money back.
Those are the nights where you see a big chunk of your lineups down below the cash line and you're saying, what the hell happened is you probably put too much weight into one pitcher who, even if a guy like Carlos Rodon or Max Scherzer at these big prices, they don't even have to go pop. They don't even have to bust. Just a mediocre game. 5, 6 innings, 5 strikeouts and a couple runs allowed, that just carves up that price so aggressively at that ownership that can kill you too. They don't have to go out and give up 12 runs and put up a negative score. They just have to not have the dominant start. And then a guy like Luis Garcia, a guy like Tyler Mahle sneaks through at much lower ownership, much lower cost. You're building stronger hitter lineups. You're getting the better performance from the pitcher at lower ownership. It aggressively changes the nature of the slate. So I am going to try. I think it looks like Rodon currently 22.2%, second highest owned pitcher on FanDuel behind Max. But guys like Luis Garcia, 16%, Sandoval not showing any ownership at all. He's sitting fourth on our board in terms of probability on the FanDuel slate, 5.2%. It's half of what we've got for Scherzer. It's 5.2 compared to 8.8 for Rodon. But in comparison to everybody else, he's right there. Everybody else is in that mid 5% range, and he's drawing 0.5% ownership. I think I'm going to go in and deliberately grab a couple extra Patrick Sandoval shares here, in addition to some Tyler Mahle, maybe some Michael Kopech, and start just dropping them in over top of a couple of these Carlos Rodon lineups. Not that I don't think Rodon is still in the best spot of the night. I just want to carve up some of that ownership and not be at like the 35% that I'm at now, maybe get it down to like 20, 25.
And that makes a lot of sense. And that's something that I know we talk a lot about balancing portfolio, doing lineup 150 max. You can apply these same strategies if you're making 5, 10, 20 lineups.
Absolutely.
As well. And then the other thing that really you can really get into is the leverage concept here of not picking, and you hear Greg talk about this for his single entry lineups, and Eric does as well. But like on Yahoo or FanDuel, I usually will play 1 or 2 hand-built lineups there if I have a spare moment, particularly Yahoo on Fridays, because I like their season-long free contest that draws me into seeing where I stand against top players there, and then how I do on that lineup. But you can do a lot with leverage there, and it's something that those concepts are handled the same way. It's just that as you shrink down the number of lineups you're playing, your leverage has a much more dramatic impact, because your portfolio is smaller, right? Therefore, your basket of risk, your risk of ruin, all the fun financial terms, is more spread out. The less options you have, yes, the better you can do, but also the worse you can do, right? So what we're doing here when we build a lot of lineups is trying to normalize this variance and recognize the ever elusive edge over all of these different slates, over now all of these different lineups. And it could be a lifetime for us to know whether we were good or bad at it, right?
I mean, all of it exists over the course of a lifetime, right? And most of it exists over the course of just kind of infinity. That's how the math on a lot of this works. So that's where, the limitations of a human life, the limitations of how many poker hands you can play in a lifetime, that's what people define as luck, right? That's what luck becomes. It's the percentage. It's where it's where your results fall within the probabilities, within the potential range of outcomes over the course of your lifetime. However many hands you get, however many lineups you get, that's what people call luck. That's what it really boils down to mathematically. So there is no such thing as luck, but that's what luck is.
But you can be clutch.
Yes,
you can be clutch. You know what is not clutch? That I'm getting all of these darn Giants in my lineup. So I'm going to go in and cap their percentages at 5 because I'm just getting too many point per dollar plays there, which I don't hate. But 1, we don't have the lineup. 2, I got plenty of time to change it. But 3, the pinch hit risk. While I think it's lower tonight, there's still an easy way to knock out at least 2 of these lefties by just bringing in a lefty from the bullpen. Mm-hmm. And opposing teams are going to do that, and then the Giants manager just can't help himself but make changes.
Yeah, we've seen it happen enough times that we know that it's a factor. I hate chasing narrative stuff like that. I hate chasing ideas like that. I can't necessarily say this is definitely going to happen. I can't necessarily project it, but I think we've reliably seen that that's just how this team plays baseball. That's how they go about their business. So we can kind of build that into our expectations a little bit at least. And it just it limits how much I want to get to them. It tempers my expectation for most of the hitters in that lineup. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I mentioned it earlier. It was one of the spots that I immediately saw earlier today that they were drawing some ownership, and I said, that's one I can easily get away from. So I probably do not have quite as much Giants as you do.
Yeah. And I'm building my guys my lineups in sections. I did 4 stacks with the 2 maximum 2 spaces between them. I did just a 4 with a 2 and a 1. Now I'm going to do my 5 stacks with a 1. So I can go in and see where things are coming out and tweak as I'm building these along. Do you think Gary Sanchez plays tonight? I would have thought he was, but I've seen 2 sites where he's not in the. We have that lineup. He's not in the lineup. Thank you.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. So now I will go remove him from my lineup.
Oh wait, no, this is still projected. Is it Sandy Leon?
We have them out. Yeah, I just know it's out.
Sandy Leon. Yep. Let me get that in there.
The player pool, we'll stop that crunch.
That's what I'm less concerned with right now. We got a little time to swap.
We got time to fix that one, but if I'm
shares in my lineups, I still got time to get it out. But I actually had Leon in the projected, thanks to the site that I get them from.
All right. I'm just looking for anything else weird. We are about 5 minutes away from lock here. So we'll stay on. I know it said we'll stay on until 7. We'll stay on until 7:05 because I'm just hitting crunch here, and
we're having fun.
Terry and I are having fun, and it's just a good time, right? So hit the like button. That does help us.
I've actually got my lineups in for a change. I'm not so. Yeah, I put them in a few minutes ago. I've changed them 2 or 3 times to to carve out some of the Rodon and pass it around like I was saying. So it's one of those slates where either it is fun to have time to play with your lineup. Sometimes it's for better, sometimes it's for worse. So we'll see how it comes out. Typically when I end up making decisions like that, it'll be a night where Carlos Rodon goes out and puts up 70 FanDuel points, and I kick myself for those 10 extra lineups that might have gotten over the top there. But I'll roll with some of my Michael Kopech and some of my Tyler Mahle shares, see what happens.
How did you do with the Padres? I'm not getting the Padres.
I expect that I have a massive share of them. Let's see. They were when I did the initial sort, and the initial sort numbers get a little skewed because I start cherry picking some of these lineups. So it's not necessarily in the order here, but they were the second highest owned team I had. I had basically them and the Dodgers at the same amount, then the Astros, and then some of the other teams that we talked about, like the Guardians, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the White Sox, less Blue Jays than I would have wanted to get to actually. I probably got a little bit more when I started moving things around, but that's a team that I mentioned a few times that, going by what I'm seeing on the list here, I probably will wish I had a few additional shares of. They were rating out fairly well.
Yeah. And that's something that can happen. So Terry has a sorting, most everybody but me does some sort of sorting process, but I still like to, put my thumb on the scale and feel like I'm the one making the decisions when they really are, and doing it more
profitable.
mechanically and efficiently than I am. But this is one of the risks is to make this thing run more quickly as we get closer to lock. I have to, there's some holes in what I'm doing, is to where I'm getting stuck with, some giants I didn't want. It's not getting to the Padres like I wanted it, etc. So
if I was hand building 150 lineups, I'm not sure that I would have the 3 or 4 Pittsburgh Pirates lineups that are probably in my lineups here, right? But I will take them through the sort, because from time to time those things do pay off, and those lineups do grade out well, likely because of some value and some ownership numbers in there, and it's not necessarily even in what I actually put into the tournament, but stuff like that does tend to happen when you're doing a sort. It's there's only so much control that you can exert. In an ideal world, I would be doing this sort and then going individual lineup by individual lineup and looking for pivots and changes that I could make manually that the optimizer, the sort, might not necessarily find. Because when you do get in there and you hand build things and you start mixing and matching and changing positions around, especially with some of the multi-position guys, you can find some interesting combinations and you can get to some interesting stuff. It's just that takes 8 minutes per lineup after I've got the initial template built, and there's just not enough hours in the day to do it that way. But that would be my absolute ideal if I had just infinite time to work with these things.
Right. And now, and I'm just quickly looking at mine. It's like, I'm not getting as much Houston as I wanted. So now I'm just going to go make 20 Houston stacks, throw it in, and then try to get my lineups uploaded. Right. So there are ways you can ham fist this stuff. But then you just kind of live with the outcomes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is one where you can't, if you didn't get what you want, you can't get mad, because so often some mistake ends up being the thing that saves your day, right?
Yeah.
It comes in, and it wasn't because you were good, it was because you ended up getting lucky and put yourself into a position to succeed, because you have made multiple correct decisions over a long time horizon that should at some point pay off and come to fruition.
And I like it better when it's things that I didn't necessarily expect that are coming up in the sort that I end up getting to that I didn't necessarily want, rather than things that I actively didn't want. And that's how it tends to happen a little bit anyway. The things that I actively don't want are things that I know are going to, have an impact negatively on me on the tournament. The things I actively do want, I know are going to come up naturally in my sort. So it's those things in the middle, the unknown unknowns, right? To put a little Rumsfeld on it. Those unknown unknowns can frequently win you the tournaments, because the field is going to be on the chalk. The field is going to be on the teams that I want to get away from, the Coors Fields of it. So it's the things that nobody's going to that end up coming up that can win you these slates. So I'm happy to take those lineups where I get them.
Yeah. All right. I'm in. We are 1 minute away from lock.
1 minute away from lock.
Want to get
top of the home run board, looking like Jordan Alvarez all the way up at the top. Juan Soto following him. I've mentioned the Astros and the Pods just tearing the cover off the home run board. So we've got to go 10 spots down the board before we get to a non-Astro or non-Padre, and that's Mr. Brandon Lau from the Tampa Bay Rays. So I'll make Brandon Lau the home run call of the day from the 10 spot on the board.
Going against my pitcher that I only ended up with less than 1% of. I had made sure I had some Austin Voth in my lineup.
I think you're going to be happy that you're under on Austin. I could be wrong.
I hate writing up players though in strategies and then not employing it, at least in somewhat of a meaningful way. Now, a large baseball slate like this, that will happen. Yeah. Sometimes it happens in NBA because suddenly a $4,000 point guard is going to play 36 minutes and breaks everything that you've looked at all day. But baseball usually is a little more static.
Yeah.
So there we go.
But, I that lingers in the back of my mind sometimes, but then I also think there's probably not anybody out there checking all 150 my lineups to see what I played, especially since I'm on FanDuel and you can't access them unless you're doing it manually like a psycho. So I think we're all right.
All right. Well, with that, we want to thank everybody for joining us on a Friday night. We're starting this all off again tomorrow at 11 o'clock. There'll be the MLB strategy show. Then at noon, you're going to get the DFS preseason show with Matt Gajeski and Neil Orfield. 3 o'clock, you are going to get the MMA live before lock. UFC locks at 4 o'clock. You're going to get Pete the Heat Rogers along with third leg Greg. And then at 6 o'clock, it looks like you will get Terry and potentially Sundacker, or I may be jumping in again since I am home alone with the dog this weekend. The wife is off running half marathon number 50, state number 50. She is in North Dakota, Fargo, to be exact. She is less than thrilled for being up there right now. So fingers crossed that the race goes and everything goes well. So,
but this is the last one on the board. This is 50 out of 50.
This is 50 out of 50. So yes. Indeed.
Are we going for territories next? Are we going Puerto Rico, Guam? Are we doing,
there was some talk about continents, of which there are 7, and that does include Antarctica.
Is there an Antarctica? Is there a marathon?
There is. They do. Wow. It's like one a year, and it's the whole thing. And maybe it's even every other year, right? Because it's one of those where you're basically doing it to say you did it. So it's like everybody plans for that one.
Yeah.
Running a marathon in Puerto Rico, I cannot think of anything more miserable. It would be so humid, like you would not be able to breathe. It would be a not fun time.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, but I would feel the same about running a marathon in New York or Texas or Canada or Antarctica,
Charleston, South Carolina,
Atlanta, anywhere really. It's I'd feel basically the same.
Oh, I heard somebody last week complaining about summer track in Texas. I can't remember who that was, but they said it was pretty humid there. Oh, that's right. It was producer Tyler. With that, we're going to get on out of here. Pole vaulting extraordinaire. We got a hat tip to Digital B21 over there on Twitter. That would be Terry. You can see me at EMAC DFS. And of course, it is Stokastic_COM. With that, gamers, good luck.